So how did you get into this whole political game?
So ironically, with everything that just happened with Charlie Kirk, I was actually recruited to work with Turning Point. So I had this goal and ambition of going to medical school. I had joined the military, so left, pretty young, 19. And after I finished up my undergrad, I was in a gap year. And so for those who have gone through the med school process, there's a lot of volunteer work that you do to kind of build up your application for these schools. And so I started working as a counter-trafficking activist and started using then social media before political influencers or influencing was really a thing. And Turning Point had found a video that I did on the hypocrisy of what was happening with border security and basically recruited me to work with them. So Charlie called me a day before I was supposed to go to medical school and offered me a job as their National Hispanic Outreach Director. And then at that point in time, I basically had less than 24 hours to decide, was I going to go one path or was I going to go a completely separate route? And so one of my mentors at the time was like, you have the ability, if you do get into politics, at this time, I didn't ever think that I would end up in Congress, but he's like, if you can at least work with this organization at the time, Turning Point was just starting out, and you can be influential in the policy, you could probably do a lot more than you ever would. So as a doctor, you can always go back to medical school if it doesn't work out. So I ended up taking a gamble, best decision that I ever ended up doing, and worked alongside Charlie Kirk, and then realized that the activism was good to a certain point, but if I wanted to really make a change, I had to really focus on what was happening in Washington, and I had to go to Washington to do it. So that's kind of how I ended up running for Congress.
Okay.
So long story short, activism into politics.
Were you at the memorial for him there?
Yeah, I spoke at the vigil and the memorial. So the vigil at the Kennedy Center and then the memorial in Arizona.
Yeah. The whole Charlie Kirk thing has just been like, I don't know. It's put like a very weird vibe out in the ether to me. It feels like we're in like a really weird place right now. And I said it the other day, it feels like the vibe right now almost feels like the COVID vibe.
Yeah, it's dark energy. What I will say is that so I was ironically enough filming a documentary on the assassination of JFK because part of my task force in Congress is I'm actually looking into the historical assassinations for the declassified files that the administration has directed these agencies to release. And I will never forget where it's like when you ask people, where were you at on 9/11? You remember. Yeah. I remember where I was at when I found out that my friend had been murdered. And David, my comms director, came and he goes, Anna, Charlie's been shot. And I went on X and I immediately saw the video. And I wish that I did not see that video because it was basically like watching my friend bleed out in real time. And I saw that and I was like, I genuinely don't think he's going to make it. And then I called my friend over at Turning Point, and he told me at that point in time that it wasn't looking good. And then I found out on the House floor that he had officially passed away. And then that was a whole thing in itself because we had called, which I don't care if this would have happened to anyone else in the country, like left wing or not, I would have still said like, let's pray for the family. And to see people choose that point of time to boo someone, I just felt like it was so disgusting. And I think that's part of the reason why people just hate politics is because you have a lot of weirdos in DC. Yeah.
And also all of the overwhelming amount of conspiracy theories and like flooding the zone or whatever you want to call it of all the people on the internet trying to dissect the whole thing and do an autopsy on the event. And, it came from here, it came from there. It was this person, they're covering it up. Nothing's real. We don't know what is up, what is down, what is left, what is right. And it just feels like, at least for me, it just made me want to like just step away from the internet for like.
Yeah, I think people need to go outside and touch some grass sometimes and get grounded in reality. It's not to say that people don't have the right to ask questions, right? Like part of what my task force is doing is looking into some of the biggest assassination in U.S. history that were surrounded by conspiracy. And to speak on just JFK, for example, we have found out that there has been credible evidence that the CIA intentionally lied to Congress, undermined investigations, stonewalled Congress's efforts, and then intimidated witnesses, et cetera. There's actually a lot of information that has come out where we won't ever have a smoking gun per se, but it creates a mosaic of where you can draw your own conclusions and assume that the CIA definitely likely had a hand in that.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if we would have had social media in 1963.
Oh, it would have gone different. I think all
of the shit that was going down then.
Yeah, and we're seeing that though re-happen now. It's kind of weird because like you said, there's kind of this weird energy surrounding what happened with Charlie. But remember, there was 2 assassination attempts on the president. A lot of people still don't. In fact, the administration doesn't know what happened with Butler.
Nope.
I can tell you that I actually cross-examined the Secret Service director who lied to me under oath, and I was going to hold her in contempt of Congress. She resigned the next day. But we knew directly from whistleblowers that came forward out of the Secret Service that they intentionally did not send people to the meetings with these sniper teams that were supposed to be pulling security for the president. You basically had an open shot. This isn't conspiratorial. Anyone who's pulling detail a security company will say, why would you leave that shot open like that? Then we,
It was a slanted roof. I mean, it was really hard to get snipers up there.
It's the whole thing is just such a joke in the way that it was handled. You look at the fact that leading up to that, a lot of people have, and they still do continue to call people that disagree with them fascists, Nazis, all this stuff. But then you look at the fact that this shooter was, he had burner phones. Whatever happened to the burner phones? Why did we not find out any information? You're telling me that you can find out more information with the NSA on any other American with a FISA warrant than you can on a shooter that tried to assassinate a president? It doesn't sit right. But there are a lot of historical similarities between what happened in the 60s and the civil unrest, and now the pendulum swinging, I think, back into more of a pro-America conservative-based value system here, politically speaking. But it's weird because in the 60s, you had Kennedy assassinated, whereas there's 2 assassination attempts on President Trump. Then you had MLK assassination. You had Charlie Kirk assassinated. There's been a lot of similarities, and I just hope that the rhetoric can be toned down. You're seeing a lot of nonsense right now with the government shutdown. But if you think for a second that these people don't know what they're doing, they pull test everything. I mean, like certain keywords will say that you can pull up the messaging from different political pundits and outlets, and even the same messaging topics from the Democrat Party, because they know exactly what will sway their voters. So they're targeting a certain sect of their own voting base to get them to turn out. And it's unfortunate because that rhetoric is what got Charlie killed, but it goes a lot deeper than that. So there's been a lot of questions as to whether there was foreign government involvement.
In which one?
In the assassination of Charlie Kirk, right? Okay. So we're going to address these theories right now. Back during the ICE riots, do you remember all of that at the beginning of the year? A lot of people were like, where are all of a sudden these big violent riots coming from? Who's funding these organizations? We found out that there was a foreign funding tied to an individual by the name of Neville Singham, who's a multi-billionaire. And he made his billions by working with the communist Chinese government. And he would and he's not a registered agent, a foreign agent, which is a FARA violation. So he's taking these millions, funneling it into organizations like the Party of Socialism and Liberation, who then in turn create these very radicalized movements, but they're not even American in theory or funded by American people. They're actually funded by foreign governments. The irony in all this is that Neville Singham, not just to Mamdani's election, so like Jews from Mamdani, but he actually also has ties to funding the Party of Socialism, the Salt Lake City queer group, which is now being investigated with former knowledge on whether or not they knew Charlie would be assassinated, who had ties to the shooter. So I do think that there's a foreign funding tie, but the question is which government, and I think it's tied to the Chinese.
Interesting.
I mean, like
called the queer what?
Salt Lake City queers.
Salt Lake City queers.
They're being investigated by the FBI, but if you look at the organization and where the funding comes from, I mean, not just them, they had ties to groups in Cuba and they are actually calling themselves terrorists. But not just that, they also have ties to the United Nations. So there's this aspect of a very pro-globalist and then a pro-Marxist movement to really sow discord and divide in this country. And that's why I recently posted on my social media, I was like, check out the bot farms that actually exist. And when you see all this shit talking on Twitter, make sure you're not arguing with the bot, because that's not like a fake thing. It happens. And so we have to realize that social media is being used to kind of stoke this divide. But in the instance of the shooter, Charlie Kirk was almost like a son to President Trump. Don Jr. will tell you was like his little brother.
Right.
Very close to J.D. Vance, very close to Kash Patel. So if you think for a second that there will be any amount of resource spared in his investigation, you're wrong. Because I know these people and I've seen the way that this administration has worked towards at least issuing some of the darkest secrets. For example, what happened with CIA and the connection to JFK's assassination. I've met with the director, but to, I think, really take into account that you have the family that is seeing all this stuff out there right now. I hope that they get every single person involved. I definitely think that it's likely that more than one person knew about what was happening, because the Salt Lake City queer group immediately deleted their page. They're under investigation. There's a foreign funding tie there. For Tyler Robinson to say that Charlie was, hateful and that he just wanted to eliminate his hatefulness, where does that come from, right? Like if you actually listen to the things that Charlie was saying and you don't clip it, you can realize it was a very logical conversation that he was trying to have. If you don't agree with it, it's still not a reason to murder someone.
Right. Well, I think the problem is people have valid questions about the narrative that was immediately projected out into the media. That obviously, if anyone with half of a brain can see that there are massive holes in it. There's big questions. There's the things like the Discord thing where Discord came out and like denied it. There's like the rhetoric.
They're being subpoenaed too, by the way, to go testify before Congress. So they're going to be coming to testify before the Oversight Committee. Yeah.
And then like the way he wrote the messages, which doesn't seem like something a 20-year-old would write. There's the whole history between him and his boyfriend and like the weird love letter he wrote to him detailing everything he was going to do. There was the video of him getting pulled over by the cops, which didn't seem to like match up with the way he was using his language there. The Dairy Queen casually getting an ice cream. You know, if you're a sociopath, maybe that's a normal thing.
Yeah.
There's just so many strange things happening with, I mean, even the guy, I don't know. I've been following the whole Candace Owens thing. I've been trying to follow. Have you paid attention to what she's been doing?
I haven't seen too much of it.
So she's dropping these videos every day that get 5 million views in like 24 hours. It's insane. And she's talking to all these people that were involved in it, politicians running around Utah, and they all have different stories. You know, it's all super strange.
Well, the good news is that the trial should be public. So that'll all come out in discovery.
Oh, that would be nice. Unlike the
which
Epstein
I'm
trial.
a huge fan and just direct transparency, but you have to understand too that there's an open investigation into this. So if you have the FBI investigating Salt Lake City queers, foreign funding ties, multiple people under investigation, they're not going to be able to give that stuff immediately, but you should be able to see it, and it's all going to come out in discovery because they have a full-fledged trial. So I think a lot of those questions will be answered, but either which way, I mean, the reaction of a group of people, even people in Washington, to the assassination of another American was really disgusting to watch in real time.
Yeah.
And it was even more disgusting to see that people, instead of saying like, hey, this was like another American that got shot, they're trying to justify it. And then when people were basically held accountable to their employers, like, hey, this is not like, if you are representing a company, right? You probably shouldn't be like saying, great, kill his wife next. And that's what some people were saying. I actually worked with some of these different social media companies, and I was like, hey, there's photoshopped images of children with blood splatter on their face saying Charlie's kids are next. Do you think that this is against your terms and conditions? And I will say to even the attorneys over at Blue Sky, which is a left-wing version of Twitter, they're like, this is not what our platform is supposed to be used for. And so when people violate the terms and conditions of usage, we're going to delete the stuff. So that's not necessarily cancel culture. That's just, hey, you guys have terms and conditions you agree to. And by the way, you probably shouldn't be calling for the assassination of his children.
Right. Totally agree with you on everything.
That's like a very common sense thing.
Totally. And the question is, when it comes to free speech online on these platforms, which are public utilities, where do you draw the line? You know,
I think they have terms and conditions. I actually sued Twitter 1.0. I don't know if you know that.
Did you really?
Yeah, during my election. This is before it really became a thing in 2020 with kicking Trump and deplatforming him. So I was throttled on my engagement on X, and they were shadow banning me on Facebook as well. So I couldn't actually get my message out there, even to fundraise and all of that. And
what year was this?
This was in 2020 when I first ran. Okay. And so I had sued them. And the thing is that so social media is I consider it a public utility, but there is stuff with Section 230 that Congress, I don't think, is ever going to want to reform, because a lot of people in Congress are owned by some of these tech people, and it gives certain protections to these tech companies. But at the end of the day, these companies, when you agree to use them, there are still terms and conditions, right? Like, you can't go into a crowded theater and yell fire. So if you are saying that, let's call for example, the public assassination of the president, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't do that because there are people that will actually engage in that act. Now, there's a big difference between like what is considered hate speech, and I think that that's a very slippery slope.
Yes.
So terms and conditions, what the company then puts it out there for, if you use our app, then this is the code of conduct you're expected with the company. Way different than, deeming something as hate speech and then moving from that, which I would argue can be very slippery slope dystopian in form.
Today's sponsor, True Classic, started with one vision, and that's to bring comfortable, fitted clothes to everyday people. Because looking and feeling awesome shouldn't come at designer prices. And their customers agree. They don't just sell 25 million shirts to 5 million customers on accident. What sets them apart is the message behind it all, from uplifting men in their daily lives to giving back to underserved communities. And it shows in their brand how they understand the everyday guy. I've been wearing True Classic for a while now, and it still impresses me every morning I put them on. Sometimes it can be difficult for me to get around in public with all the people trying to put their hands on me to cop a feel of this buttery smooth fabric. Forget overpriced designer nonsense and skip the generic cookie-cutter potato sacks. True Classic delivers premium essentials built for real life. Whether you're out in the town or working up a sweat, level up your wardrobe with style that fits any scenario. You can grab it at Target or Costco, but for the best deals, head on over to trueclassic.com/Danny. That's trueclassic.com/Danny to get hooked up today. It's linked down below. Now back to the show. And then you have the Section 230 thing, which in, I think it was 2020, you had Beto O'Rourke saying that we need to take a look at Section 230 and repealing Section 230. And it was a huge Democrat thing. And now, since the Charlie Kirk assassination, you have people on the right saying we need to question 230. Just the other day, the guy, I forget who the guy was. I don't know these people's names. He was questioning the FBI director, saying, look at this. They're talking about your family on these social media platforms. They're coming up with conspiracy theories about your family. We should talk about Section 230. Like,
well, I think so. Section 230 does give certain protections to a lot of these apps that I would argue immunity and basically makes them almost impossible to sue. So the reason why we wanted to repeal Section 230 is because they were literally tipping the scale on election. Like if you're suppressing, shadow banning people because you don't like their viewpoints and you're interfering with the reach of that person to be able to talk to constituency.
Right.
That's election law that they're literally meddling in. And I actually found out that after the 2020 election, I was questioning Yoel Roth, who was over at Twitter before he was fired, before Elon Musk purchased it and changed it to X. So in 2020, and I actually brought this up to Netflix because I was debating this topic. So on January 6th specifically, President Trump said for people to remain peaceful. I got proof that the Department of Homeland Security under CISA, under a domestic terrorism watch division, was actually engaging in joint state actor relationships with Meta, YouTube, now formerly Twitter, and a few other outlets to suppress the president, specifically calling for there to be peace and not to have happened at January 6th. And so we questioned him. He perjured himself. He lied about it. I had the evidence. I actually had screenshots from a group chat that had taken place. And he did not ever think that that would probably resurface years later, but they were actually communicating on a private cloud server. And it was a big deal. And the fact is that you do have people in government. Many of them are not elected officials, but these bureaucrats that have been there for X amount of time, and they're behind the scenes doing and operating in a way that's unbecoming of any government official, but I would argue too are responsible for American civil liberties being violated. And so this can get into a bigger conversation on FISA reform and all of that. But it's a problem. And so you see the corruption, you see how they tip the scales, you see how the social media companies up until President Trump won, really until he got shot, because he got shot in the face, grazed his ear, but literally the guy would have killed him if Trump didn't move his head. It wasn't until that point that these social media companies were like, wow, this is actually a problem, and then completely pulled back and then got behind the president.
Yeah, that's a problem when they can do this throttling stuff and the shadow banning stuff, because
it was a thing.
They don't have to warn you. They don't have to actually say, hey, you violated this rule. It can just be some subjective behind the scenes thing. It's happened to me before. I've talked to people at YouTube about it. There's a whole layer above their head, above the moderators' heads, when they see like, hey, we're looking at a video. There's nothing wrong with it. You violated no rules. We're looking at the transcripts. There's no words in there that are pulling up any flags. But for some reason, your video is not searchable. So this means this is above my head. This is the floor above me.
Yeah, shadow bans information.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. And I get why you would threaten them with the Section 230 stuff over that stuff. That makes total sense.
Well, it's literally election interference. We have proof that they did it. And it's dangerous because if it's happened once, it's going to happen again. I remember where I was at when I heard Alex Jones got kicked off of YouTube. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. So he's now, I think, since been reinstated. I don't know if is he kicked off again?
I don't know if that's true or not. I keep seeing these things about Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes saying that, oh, they were let back on and they were pulled down the next day.
I think people are allowed back on YouTube. And I say that because I saw a statement from House GJ Sherry saying that people that had formerly been banned from YouTube are now back. So and that was like a legit press release.
Okay. Can you find out, Steve, if Alex Jones is back on YouTube?
Or the press release from House Judiciary too that talks about it. But all that to say that there's definitely an issue with 230. Is Congress going to fix it? Probably not.
No, Alex Jones is not back on YouTube. Also, according to AI.
Can you find the House Judiciary release on this? It might be on House Judiciary or House GOP on X.
This is the question though. What's worse? What happens if you remove 230? Now these companies,
you can reform it.
You don't have to fully remove it. These companies will go bankrupt, right?
Well, so there's a certain level of when you are basically blatantly interfering in elections or defaming people, putting out false information that's literally responsible for, I would argue, remember that faulty lawsuit that President Trump was hit with, where some random woman was like, he assaulted me in a changing room. Yeah. There was no evidence. It was hearsay. They basically went after him. It was lawfare in conjunction with a smear campaign. I mean, these people, if they're knowingly engaging in that stuff, should they not be allowed to be called out and sued on that? I would argue that they would then be more careful in putting out correct information.
Maybe there could be carve-outs to if they're actually caught putting their thumb on the scale or doing something like that.
You can reform it. You don't have to fully delete it, but at least have the conversation to reform it. But to say we can't do anything about that,
to where it doesn't interfere with the user's free speech, but it keeps them accountable for political fuckery.
Exactly. Right? No fuckery.
Is this it?
Yeah, hold on. Yep.
Due to our oversight efforts, Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations to return to the platform. But that's not all. What is this?
So it goes into all of it.
When was this? When did this come out? What day?
September 23rd.
September 23rd. Oh, okay. Interesting.
So Google,
and they paid Trump $25 million.
They just paid out. And I think that he probably, I mean, his lawsuits are not done with, but I mean, think about how much, if people had to argue just on truthfulness alone, I think it would really change the game of politics. But you always know too, like there's these like October surprises right before an election season. They'll save the worst smear campaign right before an election to the month of October because they're like, we're going to hit voters. And if we do it too early, then they can diffuse it or get ahead of it. Social media has actually contributed, though, to the ability of many people to, I think, refute false narratives right away. So thank you to Elon for purchasing X. Yes. We'll forever be happy.
And allegedly, Google is going to move in this direction, too, with these community notes.
They should. However, what I have seen is the issue with community notes currently is there's still an issue in way that people can stack it. So going into like the whole bot farm aspect of it, if you get a bunch of people to file the community notes, it can kind of sway the direction of the community note in a direction that might not necessarily, it's not necessarily fully transparent the truth, but might kind of more direct you in a way that they want you to go. So it like might be a half truth.
Right.
So obviously, we don't want,
better than, I don't know. I don't know what the alternative is.
Yeah, we don't want like the Department of Truth Ministry here. But I do think that, with what happened with Charlie influencing, I do think that there should be some mechanism on these social media apps to track if someone's a bot farm, which you can't tell me that they can't come up with that text. So track the bot farms, at least engage and flag if you're engaging with a bot. And then also too, in the way that you have to be a registered foreign agent, if you're an influencer taking money from a foreign government, you should be required to divulge that to the American people.
Right. Influencer taking money.
Yeah,
from Are there influencers taking money from foreign governments?
I would assume so. It seems pretty apparent.
Do you know of any?
Not personally.
Everyone's accused of. I'm accused of taking money from the CIA. I wish I could get money.
Well,
from the CIA.
I would tell you that even if you,
I've asked some of my CIA buddies to give me subsidy.
I'd be like, get me money from the CIA. Yeah. USAID was paying influencers, so it's definitely a thing.
Oh yeah, that's true. We had Mike Benz in here yesterday, and he was blowing our minds.
I love him. He calls me tip of the spear.
He was showing us all of these crazy carve outs, these companies that
shell companies too,
taking billions of dollars to draw these crazy heat maps of words, hate speech words, COVID, disinformation, pharmaceutical words, and like mapping them across all the social media companies. And it was like some crazy Minority Report social media. I told you though, AI.
Remember said they like poll test and like sway influence. So it's like half the time you go on the internet, it's like, are you even interacting with a real person or is this a psyop?
Right. Yeah, it's insane. He was scaring the shit out of me yesterday with all the money that they were dumping into that stuff. All the just like the taxpayer dollars that are going into these basically CIA carve outs to regulate free speech online. And
yeah, the CIA discourse. Has it's been going through its own cultural change, I'll say. So the current director is a like-minded individual and very much aligned with the president, but he's not controlling everyone at the agency. So these different intelligence communities, especially, there's a lot of people that have their own goals and objectives.
Yeah. And like when it comes to people like these guys who like the Tyler Robinson guy, or I forget the guy's name, who tried to shoot the president and shot his ear. Like when it comes to the FBI and the CIA, at what point are, like, obviously they are using a lot of crazy, super advanced surveillance tools that we've probably never heard of to monitor people's communication online, their search history, all that kind of stuff. And going back to like the moment that we live in today, where like nothing is real. We live in this like fake reality matrix.
Well, don't go too black pill. I mean, there's still a lot of good that's happening, but in a sense, you just don't know when you're arguing with them.
I don't know what's real anymore. So I just like let all the influencers battle it out, and then I sort of like, I'll take the scraps. But like when it comes to monitoring, when it comes to these agencies, the FBI and the CIA trying to monitor terrorists, I mean, after 9/11,
we're getting into FISA now.
They did so much. Like I had a NSA whistleblower in here who was first day at NSA was 9/11, and he was explaining to me how they basically implemented this dragnet system. I forget what it was called now, but
it was under the Patriot Act. Yeah,
it was the Patriot Act. This was a specific software that they were using in the NSA and the CIA, and it was like a dragnet, right?
Well, they did that on January 6th too.
Right, right. And to surveil and try to track terrorist activity. Now, all the stuff that came out on the shooter that shot Trump, searching the internet, how to assassinate somebody, the best weapon to use to assassinate somebody from 200 yards away, like
I think he had a handler,
videos
and
he was pushing,
like
it was insane. Like this guy would be the top of the red flag list if I'm any of these agencies.
So you're getting into the reason why we need to repeal the Patriot Act, FISA reform, all of that. To be clear, I was one of a handful of Republicans that voted down FISA, and as a result of that, I was kept off as a female veteran on House Armed Services that comes up with the policy and appropriations for the Department of Defense.
Can you explain what FISA is for people?
FISA is basically what they use as a means of violating your civil liberties in the name of protection and keeping you safe. It was put up as a result of, I think, people wanting to push more of a police state, to be honest with you. But the reforms that currently exist, I mean, President Trump was illegally surveilled in prior to him getting into office. Right. And we all know that by the information Tulsi's put out at the direction of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. But he was under surveillance because they got a FISA warrant in a secret court and got permission to surveil him. And that is completely unconstitutional. But there's some reforms that can take place to ensure that good Americans aren't having their civil liberties violated, and they don't want to put those reforms in place. FISA is up for renegotiation, if you will, this year. But I don't know that Congress has the stomach to actually put those reforms in place. So we'll see how much pressure the White House puts top down to actually get that done. But all that to say, because I voted down FISA, because it does violate your civil liberties, I was kept off committee assignments because of it.
And it goes both ways for people too. John Kiriakou was a CIA whistleblower who tried blowing the whistle on the torture program. And he's supposed to go in front of get some sort of like secret court to explain this stuff. There's a whistleblower protocol in the United States, and they denied him. Or maybe he did do it. I don't remember exactly. Anyways,
and their intelligence.
They snitched on him to like all the other judges, and then they alerted the head of the fucking CIA and the NSA that this guy's blowing the whistle.
Well, former directors, a lot of them not so good people.
Yeah.
So there's a cultural change in the CIA and the FBI, but there's still a lot of growing pains as a result of that. But all that to say, if you are a good, God-fearing American that believes in the Constitution, you should consider going to work at both those agencies, because right now they were recruiting from a lot of left-leaning colleges. And what we're finding, at least on the polling, is showing that there's literally this assassination culture that exists on the left wing, or means to say that if you're an American but you disagree with what I have to say, that it's okay to kill you as a result of that. And that's kind of the radicalization. I think a lot of it is due to foreign influence, but a lot of people, unfortunately, are being pushed in the wrong direction. So we need people that generally have a passion for that job to go into these career fields. Now, in regards to the Patriot Act, I think that was done in the name of the American people being afraid. And so people wanting more of a surveillance state push that. And I do think it still needs to be repealed. If you ever said that before, you'd probably kill your political career. We actually have a number of bipartisan supporters to repeal the Patriot Act, but I don't think it'll ever be voted on because I don't think they'll ever bring it to the floor.
Right. How would that happen if you did
so
actually?
So how it works with legislation is you have to either get a certain amount of co-sponsors, but they can even then block it from coming to the floor. And then there's something called the Rules Committee, and it's a number of Democrats and Republicans. It's usually like 6 and 6, so 12 members total. Mm-hmm. And they take the direction of the speaker on what legislation to bring from the floor, working with the House Majority Leader, which would be Steve Scalise. And then so they determine the legislation that comes to the floor for the House of Representatives.
Okay. That makes sense.
So it's not like, I'm just a bill and Schoolhouse rocks. There's some people that, yeah, I wish it was, but it's not like that.
Yeah, no, the social media stuff is, it's crazy. And, it does feel like it's getting better right now. And, I know, especially ever since Elon purchased Twitter and made it X, things have been getting a lot better. And this news with like YouTube reinstating people and letting off the boot on the neck of the people who are violating these quote unquote hidden policies, like in the COVID era and all this stuff. I always worried what's going to happen with these social media companies when Trump's no longer in office and when the pendulum swings.
So we have to evolve with the times, right? Because like no one thought even 50 years ago that there'd be apps and people would be talking in apps. Like people used to read the newspaper. Now they go to X and do it kind of the same way.
My dad still reads the newspaper.
Okay, well, your dad's a cool guy, but most people are on social media, right? Especially if you're like under the age of like 45, you're on social media.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that we have to take a look at. I think Trump has a pretty good finger on the pulse because he was personally impacted by it. And his son, Barron Trump, Don Jr., Eric Trump, they're all very active on social media, so they understand. And so I think a lot of good reforms will happen. But after Trump, if it's J.D. Vance, it's going to continue to kind of force the country in the correct direction, at least in regards to protecting freedom of speech, but then also ensuring that if you are straight up putting out defamatory information or you're allowing your platform to call for the assassination of sitting members of Congress or people that you don't agree with, you can't do that. By the way, also too, I think we can also say like, hey, maybe these companies should be a little bit better at allowing snuff films to be publicly circulated, right? Like snuff film is like someone getting killed. In the last week leading up to what happened with Charlie, I saw a black woman executed, broad daylight, shot in the head in, I think it was Philadelphia somewhere, that was circulating. I then saw the poor Ukrainian woman that was stabbed in the neck, and then the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And it was like this stuff, you have 12-year-old kids on these apps.
Right.
Do they really need to be seeing that? There should be at like a certain level of like warning or like put up something, but warn people ahead of time.
Yeah. Fall is finally here. And that means yard work, football, and hunting trips. And the only way I'm staying fresh through all of that is with Mando deodorant. From your pits to your package and everywhere in between, Mando controls body odor for 72 hours, and that's perfect for long game days or hiding from the feds in a crowd of fanatics. It's clinical strength, 2 times better than the standard. After just 12 hours, sweat was reduced by 92%. And it doesn't just mask odor, it prevents it. 100% of study participants experienced all-day odor protection. And that's why I use Mando. It's absolutely wonderful in hot situations. Try bourbon leather. It's delicious. Mando is known for using premium ingredients like gentle mandelic acid. Don't wait. Grab yours now at shopmando.com and experience double protection today. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, a cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers can get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code DANNY at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered. With deodorant plus sweat control, say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. Did you do any work on or have anything to do with the push to release the Epstein Files?
Yeah, I was the only member of Congress calling for this back in January. And then people decided to make it political. So I'm not going to use it to smear the president. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised to see people all of a sudden care about this until I realized they were trying to smear the president with it.
What do you mean? Like all of a sudden care about it?
So back in, or I think it was.
And why were you the only one talking about it in January?
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
So in November of last election cycle, there was a Democrat senator that actually blocked Marsha Blackburn's push to release the Epstein flight logs. So that was, remember, Joe Biden era, blocks the release in the Senate, and she was pushing for it.
Yep.
So then you saw the new DOJ come in. I had been pushing, I think it's starting in January. So my task force was stood up. It was January, February timeframe. My task force was stood up, and this was part of our purview of jurisdiction, but we don't hold declassification authority. So we basically wanted to see if there was any ability for us to investigate the files. So we kept calling for it publicly. Around end of February timeframe, I had become aware of a whistleblower that came forward that was formerly at the FBI that was alleging destruction of evidence at the agency under the former FBI director prior to Trump getting into office, pertaining to, of all things, Jeffrey Epstein, among another other bunch of things.
Destruction of files? Of evidence.
Yeah, so I was like, this is interesting. So I actually introduced a piece of legislation in March that actually was called, I think it was the Stop the Shred Act. You can pull up the Fox News article on it. And I reference it right then and there, like, hey, there's something shady happening at the FBI. Here's the person that's doing it. I had actually reported it to the FBI, and I was still calling publicly for the release of the documents, and no one gave a shit. No one gave a shit. There was not one person that was a Democrat that cared about it. And then all of a sudden we started seeing them realize that you could probably try to use this to smear the president. What's been interesting is I have a paper trail leading up to this. Not one person said anything. All last Congress, they didn't care about this. And then I actually take this topic obviously very seriously. And I actually went into the room with both Democrats and Republicans and the victims and their attorneys that came to talk to Congress. And they actually themselves said President Trump had nothing to do with it. So the question I have is that you had the Democrats in Senate blocking this last cycle. Then you had them try to use it to smear the president. They're up there with, like, these protesters had showed up completely separately and unrelated to the press conference that they were hosting on this, but with signs that were basically alleging that President Trump had assaulted people. That's all political theater. They don't really give a shit. If you're telling me that the same group of people care about victims, yet they did nothing when they're allowing literally Hispanic women and children to be trafficked across the U.S. and Mexico border, and they're like, no, please come on in, and they did nothing about it.
Yeah.
I think it's completely hypocritical.
Sure.
Now, House Oversight, which I encouraged Chairman Comer to do this, and I'm glad he did, released information and documents. I think it's to the tune of over 30,000 documents, which they should. There's no new information. There actually was new information. And by the way, I don't know any member of Congress or investigator that's gone through all 30,000 documents. And for people to say, well, that was publicly available, really, where you had to go physically to court, request the documents. It was nowhere housed online. So we've been able to put that information out there. But interesting to note, there is currently an active lawsuit with the victims and the banks that allowed for these transactions to take place. And some of the perpetrators that were involved in what happened with the trafficking, their attorneys have contacted the victims' attorneys to settle. So you have an active lawsuit right now. So we can't tip the scales of the lawsuit because that's using your position of influence in a legal matter. You can't do that. That's illegal. So yes, we want to find out who's involved and we want to know. But to say that this is all of a sudden done in the good heart and good nature because you believe it should be released, where the hell were you back in January? Where were you in February, March, and April for all of this stuff? And then you see them smear the president, and I'm not going to get behind that.
Yeah, totally. But I think that
actually, you should pull up the Shred Act. It was a good one.
Yeah, try to find the
Shred Act on Google, Fox News.
I was astonished at the response to the Epstein Files because it seemed to me like it finally seemed like we had one topic that both the left and the right could agree on, right? We need to see the frickin' Epstein Files because if you do any kind of research into the guy, you can tell that he is connected to both sides. There's one common denominator with all the people that are attached to Jeffrey Epstein, and that is super wealthy, powerful people. Whatever is in that list or those files or whatever, it is beyond a shadow of doubt, it's going to be the Rosetta Stone to all the most powerful people in the world.
Sorry, so check this out. So this is, look at the date, March 14th, 2025. Okay, so I'm like going public with this. And I'm the only one screaming from the rooftops. Now go down and read about it. It even references it down here. So this is right after we were notified, go up a little bit, that there was destruction of evidence under the former deputy director at the FBI.
Okay.
So it's a
Luna wants
legislation.
federal agents caught destroying or concealing government documents to be eligible for a life sentence in prison. Luna, who is leading the task force on the declassification of government records, is introducing a new bill called Stopping High-Level Record Elimination and Destruction (SHRED) Act of 2025. It would levy mandatory sentence of 20 years to life for any government official or employee of the Department of Justice or anyone in a wider intelligence community found to have concealed, removed, or mutilated federal records, according to the bill text previewed by Fox News Digital. Wow.
So you can go down, and actually references a conversation that I had with a whistleblower. So go down. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, and this goes to the Secret Service allegedly had destroyed documents with Kennedy. So that's why it's referenced there too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Benny Johnson reported whistleblower allegations within FBI in a bid to block Patel's work. And then if you go down, declassified documents about Epstein, tidal wave pressure. So like I reference all of it. So all of that to say, I do think that it's possible that information could have been destroyed and or planted. And so that's when I think they're like, well, we're going to release credible information and whatnot. But I also think at the end of the day, so the one thing, and I put out a tweet about this on my X platform because people wanted to know what the victims had alleged in regards to foreign government ties.
Yeah.
And so the attorney spoke for the group and said that they were made aware of foreign ties to Jeffrey Epstein, specifically had reference. Actually, pull up the tweet, go to my Rep Luna account and type in just like on the search, and you can actually get the verbatim posting right there. So yeah, type in Epstein or like foreign ties and Epstein, see if that works. Epstein victims, maybe. Yeah, see if it's on there. Go down. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, that one, September 4th. There we go.
This is what is this from?
This is my X account, my official account.
I mean, like, what is this information from? This is from the witnesses?
This is directly from the witnesses.
Okay.
Their attorney.
Got it.
Read that second paragraph.
In my opinion, there's definitely an intelligence connection. Countries named by the lead attorneys for the witnesses included Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Israel, as well as former CIA director inferred to be the CIA director under the Bush administration, based on the attorney's description of interactions while Epstein was in his work arrest program.
Yeah, yes. So they named those countries. What's interesting is that
they forgot England or the UK.
Well, they didn't reference that from what the witnesses. So that came directly from the witnesses and the attorney. Mm-hmm. So this was specifically, though, alleged who he had worked with, right?
Yes.
So what's interesting about that, though, is that this was like, I didn't see many people talking about what the victims were telling us directly. And they did promise to get us a list of names, but we have not gotten that list of names yet. And I think that's because there's a pending lawsuit.
Who promised?
The victims. They promised to release the names of their perpetrators, but we haven't gotten that list yet. And I think it's because there's a pending lawsuit.
And that's why they're saying that Jeffrey Epstein only trafficked to himself. He's a lone trafficker.
Well, that would be a question for the victims, right? Like, I don't know who they're going to have on the list. Everyone's asking for the list. Both Democrats and Republicans are like, hand it over if you have something. But again, going back to the statements from the attorney, their clients are being contacted by these people that are allegedly involved. So we're very careful to make sure that we don't tip the scales of a lawsuit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like
wild.
The whole clusterfuck of all of it is just like,
transparency is the best disinfectant. Yeah.
I just like, it's like, look, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's probably a fucking duck. It's just like the JFK thing. If you ask everybody, if you poll every American and ask them, do you think Lee Harvey Oswald was acting alone on November 22nd, 1963? 99% of people that are paying attention, at least, would say absolutely not.
Well, and they are now vindicated with our findings, because we have now testimony that he was shot from both the front and the back. There's multiple shooters, and
right. I mean, anyone with two eyes can see that, right? Like, it's the same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. Anybody with two eyes can tell you.
But the CIA at the time too, anyone that did question that, they had people at the Washington Post that would discredit people. They were threatening doctors' license if they went forward that were actually in the operating room when Kennedy was brought there. So there's been a lot. You could talk about the intelligence influence in old media, which is now different because we have social media.
Right.
But
right. Well, didn't Obama, didn't he do something like a new age Project Mockingbird?
That would open the American people up to propaganda.
Yeah, it was like opening the American people up to propaganda.
Yeah,
like,
so
like
they
making
wanted to
propaganda
repeal
legal.
it. Mike Lee was talking about that. Smith-Mundane Act, something like that.
That sounds about right.
Smith something Act.
Yes.
Anyways, we wanted to rename it the Charlie Kirk Act, but I don't think that'll happen either because Congress is disappointing.
Yeah.
It should happen though.
Well, I mean, like the Epstein stuff, look, I'm not optimistic that any of this stuff's ever going to come out. Same thing with the Kennedy stuff.
The Kennedy stuff, we've gotten some pretty wild stuff. So they've literally basically
the evidence
admitted,
is out, right?
Yeah,
if you want to find it, the documents have been uncovered and declassified. If you actually,
and we're still getting more documents though, because there's this was decades of hidden information. By the way, the Secret Service did destroy certain documents that they were told not to.
Mm-hmm.
Why would the Secret Service do that? Seems kind of shady. Mm-hmm. But there's still documents that we're still gathering to include stuff that we're getting from the presidential library. So we're still, and as soon as we get it, we upload it to the archives. But it's like, how many people are going to go through that? So we're doing it in the name of historical significance and transparency, but a lot of people just have moved past it because it's not a hot trending topic anymore.
Have you ever talked to John Newman?
Mm-mm.
I think he's a professor at the University of Washington, and I think that's the name of it, in Washington, D.C. And he is, out of all of the JFK experts and authors I've talked to, I asked them, I'm like, who's the top guy, that knows more about this stuff than anyone? And they all say John Newman, because he's the guy. All JFK authors, they base their books on previous books, right? Instead of going to the source, they read a bunch of other books and they compile their book, right? They all base their books on this guy's work, on this guy's books, John Newman. He has literally schizophrenically drawn out the map of everything that's happened. Yeah, it's the Always Sunny meme. And he's read every document forwards and backwards.
For Oliver Stone's film. I interviewed Stone.
Yeah, he was he was for the first JFK film, he was a super advisor for it.
Yeah, so we work with Jeff Morley and an investigative team. Morley. Yeah, so Jeff Morley, he's like a Bernie Sanders Democrat. So I mean, this is truly bipartisan. But they won't tell you that. So
yeah, it's definitely bipartisan. Obviously, it's bipartisan. And so one of the biggest smoking gun that John Newman explained to me was that Oswald, a 2-time Russian defector, Soviet defector, was on the parade route on November 22nd. He had the highest level of FBI flash stops on his file. He had an active CIA file and an active FBI file.
Well, they're observing him and they lied to Congress about it.
Observing him, on the threat list, he was at the top.
Yeah, they were reading his mail. We have all that evidence.
They were tracking him through New Orleans, Dallas, Mexico City, and Newman got all of the files on him, all of the cables that were going between the CIA desk in Langley, between the CIA desk in Mexico City, and he has the evidence of all of them, and he has all the people who signed off on them. So there was one lady who was the counterintelligence liaison for the CIA. Her name was Jane Roman, and she was still alive, maybe 10 years ago. And I think Morley and Newman went to go visit this lady, Jane Roman. Because there was all these files on one hand that were saying the FBI was monitoring him through
the CIA.
New Orleans, and the CIA, FBI and the CIA, through New Orleans, Dallas, and New Mexico. And then there was another CIA file after, or I think it was maybe a week before they shot the president, that was signed off by Jane Roman, the same lady who's signed the other ones, saying that we have no contact or no records of Lee Harvey Oswald since January of 1962, which was when he was still in the Soviet Union. So they went up to her and they interviewed her. They say, look, why did you sign off on this, saying that there was no contact with him or no records on him since 1962, while over here there are these other records of him. You guys were following him up until the day he shot the president. And she stopped and grinned, and she said, obviously this is obviously evidence of something about Lee Harvey Oswald that they wanted to keep very close to the vest.
Yeah. So I actually went and met with the ambassador to Russia, and his team. And what's interesting is when Lee Harvey Oswald went to Minsk, they actually had him under observation. They did a full psychological profile on him, and they thought he was a freaking kook. Yeah. And they're like, so the Russian government at the time was very friendly with Kennedy. And I'll get into this in a second, because in the 90s, the investigative body of Congress that was looking back into the JFK files after Oliver Stone's movie tried to get these documents from the Russian government, and they said no. So we've been the first delegation since the 90s to meet with the Russian government, which is separately crazy. Like, why have we waited that long to meet with another superpower? By the way, and this could go back into like 2016, the Russia collusion thing was total nonsense. We know that for a fact. But look at how it's impacted and affected foreign policy. So this is something completely separate. Right. So I met with them, and they agreed to release these files publicly on their KGB findings, but they actually brought these documents to the American government at Kennedy's funeral. The ambassador to Russia brought these documents saying, this is who we think that actually did it, because they had these people under surveillance as well, as like hey, we want to be friends, like let's figure out who killed the president. And we never got those files. I think that the CIA destroyed them. And so all of that to say that in the psychological profile that the KGB put together on Oswald, they thought he was a kook. He was not a good shot. There's a famous story of him being under surveillance in Minsk, Russia, and he tried to go hunting to feed his family, and he couldn't shoot for shit. And so they're like, there's no way that this guy could actually pull the trigger. And then in addition to that, he showed up to the Russian embassy in Mexico City with a pistol, and the head of the KGB was like, you're crazy. Like, they thought he was just 5150 nut job. Right. So yeah, he was a patsy.
Yeah. This was the text from John Newman that he basically wrote up the story about how him and Jeff Morley went to visit Jane Roman, and she signed off on the October 10, 1963 CIA HQS cable saying that the latest HQS, whatever, I don't forget what that stands for.
Headquarters?
Maybe. Information on Oswald was dated to May 62. She replied, yes, I'm signing off on something I know isn't true. And then she asked what she thought about the false HQS cable from John Whitten. She replied, to me, it's indicative of a keen interest in Oswald held very closely on a need-to-know basis.
Oh, yeah, no, we recently, too, found out last week. I'll actually read this to you. So I actually went on with Morley to talk about this, because this was a finding that was released in the JFK files.
Pull up the cable, Steve. I think I sent you a photo of the actual there it is.
So this one actually broke on Monday. So this was on Will Harvey's travel log. So let me get through this. Hold on. So there was a CIA assassination program at the time known as ZR-Rifle. And ultimately what they found out is that an individual by the name of Harvey had defied Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis in the fall of 62. Harvey was transferred to Rome in June of 63, and within 2 months after he was assigned to Rome, he had received authorization to covertly travel back into the United States. And it became apparent in this release of the document that the CIA told the Church Committee in 1975 that Harvey did not use the alias William Walker after June 1963, which we now know is completely false, and that the FAA in supporting Harvey's secret travel in late 1963 is entirely new, unfounded documents. So he basically used a fake name to travel back to the United States running a assassination program, and just so happened to be here when JFK was assassinated. And this was been released. So we're still getting new documents, and this is just the length of time that it's taken for the task force and really Morley's team to kind of go through all this. Yeah. But all that to say, when I first started the task force, they thought that we were going to post a bunch of conspiracy theories. When I said that there was multiple shooters, they said that I was pushing conspiracy theories. Yeah. And I was right. And so we're interested in facts, and we can let the American people draw their own conclusions.
Yep. It's pretty crazy when you really dig into the I like to call them the boring details, because it can be boring reading through some of these old reports.
But the director, Radcliffe, actually has a great perspective. He goes, I'm the new director. So whatever sins were committed of past agencies, I'm not going to take responsibility for, and I'll let the American people know the truth. And so he's been releasing all this stuff.
But does he have the power to let the American people know the truth?
Well, yeah, so previous directors, even though presidents had authorized the release, did not release the files. But we have Tulsi ODNI, Radcliffe at the CIA, and Patel at the FBI. So under their direction, they can push for the authorized release of these files and not undermine the president. This was all previously stonewalled. In fact, there was documents that came out in the Kennedy release that Biden had also tried to release, and the National Archives refused to release them.
Really?
Yeah. So there's been a big push for this, and we're going through. We have the MLK hearing next, so we're going to be going through that, working with some expert investigators. And then
I think they're just going to wait for everybody to die. I think there's a couple people still alive. Once they're dead, maybe.
They released the MLK files and they released the RFK files. We just haven't had a chance to fully go through this stuff yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever spoken to Danny Sheehan?
Mm-mm.
He's fascinating. He's a Harvard lawyer who was he worked on the Pentagon Papers. He worked the Pentagon Papers thing, all about the Watergate scandal.
That's an interesting thing there.
He look up all the cases Danny Sheehan worked on. A bunch of really famous cases. And he is like a galaxy brain on the whole UFO topic and the JFK topic. And I had him in here. We were talking about JFK. He was explaining to me basically how like the mob and the let's get the Pentagon Papers, the Watergate
I feel like
burglary.
I've seen him
Karen
at my
Silkwood
hearings
case
on UAPs.
The Iran. Oh yeah, he was on the Iran Contra scale. He deposed everyone in Iran Contra.
Yeah.
He's like, he's an OG. He's a legend when it comes to all this stuff. But because he was around and deposing all these people during this time in the middle of the Cold War, he had like firsthand knowledge of all of the people that are peripheral to the Kennedy assassination. And
there's a lot.
And yeah,
there was a lot.
It's crazy how connected it all is.
Well, speaking of his work, I mean, he reminds me of George Knapp. So at the UAP hearing, George Knapp is like, yeah, I smuggled these Soviet files on a program called Thread 3 that was looking into UAPs. It was like a UAP task force because they had a lot of weird interactions in the Soviet era. And we were like, well, how the heck did you get these out of Soviet Russia? He's like, well, I just ripped off the top paper and stuck them in my bag. Yeah. I'm like, you probably deserve a star at Langley for that. I mean, like, you weren't at the agency, but the fact that you're able to smuggle out these like Soviet era documents to, the United States is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's insane. My free time is short. And the way I see it, why would I waste time binge watching actors on a television when I could learn something from people I admire? That's why I've been using today's sponsor, Masterclass. On Masterclass, you're not killing time. You're getting inside of the heads of some of the most interesting people of all time. I can watch Metallica talk about leadership and dealing with ego over decades. Then I can flip over to Werner Herzog talking about filmmaking and telling stories that feel true. And then I can dive into Noam Chomsky, dissect how power works and how language is used. And to me, that's a night way better spent than watching reruns or scrolling. It's easy for me because the classes are broken down into bite-sized lessons and I can watch it in 10-minute chunks. Or sit down for a full hour if I really want to dive in. With over 200 classes across business, writing, music, politics, you name it, it's like having a library of mentors on demand. Masterclass makes me feel like my downtime is actually paying me back. And right now, our listeners can get an additional 15% off their annual membership at masterclass.com/Danny Jones. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/Danny Jones. It's linked down below. Now back to the show. But Danny was explaining to me how these anti-Castro Cubans were working for the CIA.
And tied into the mob too.
And they were tied into the mob as well. And basically when Kennedy did the Bay of Pigs thing and basically didn't send the air support and all that stuff, the Cubans despised him. They were training hit teams, and he was calling them triangular hit teams, the CIA was in Miami, to take out Castro. And there was, I forget the names of one of the guys who was in those triangular hit teams, who was a Cuban dissident, went to Cuba twice to try to assassinate Castro. They failed. And Danny was like, they basically used these same Cuban hit teams to assassinate the president. And he goes, I had evidence that these Cubans were there on the route in 1963. And I was like, that's weird. I'm going to interview an ex-CIA anti-Castro Cuban guy who's like 95 tomorrow.
Oh no.
He goes, what was his name? I go, Felix Rodriguez. He goes, oh, he was on that team. And I almost
So did he kill Kennedy?
I didn't want to ask him.
You should have totally asked.
But I went in there. I went into his museum in Miami, and he had all these like Cuban armed commandos everywhere. And I was just like, one guy had an office with a picture of Kennedy and like a strike through his face. And yeah, it was crazy. But
yeah, I think a lot of people sought to benefit from his elimination. Yeah. And so it's interesting because, obviously we're very, we also know that the Kennedy family is still around, so we want to be respectful of that. But also the American people deserve to know if there was a coup against the American people and the U.S. government by an intelligence agency or people connected to an intelligence agency. So.
Well, long story short, John Newman, his his overall theory on this whole thing is that it was a military coup. He thinks it was the Joint Chiefs of Staff who wanted like an all-out nuclear war with China and Russia.
Oh, they definitely, what I can tell you is from the Russian perspective, the CIA did not, and this is just based on the documentation that we've also gotten from the release of the files. There are certain actors within the CIA that did not like that Kennedy was so openly friendly with the Russian government. And I think that they viewed him as a communist sympathizer. And he did not have his cabinet with supporters, and his own vice president at the time, I believe, was seriously undermining his efforts. So he had his brother, but then they killed his brother too.
Right.
So would they turn a blind eye if they knew about an assassination attempt? Probably, because they looked at him as a sympathizer. He also was at the time working on he wanted to do a joint mission with the Russian government and American astronauts to the moon. A lot of people don't know that. And so he was very, very friendly with the Russian government and was back channeling communications, even despite what the CIA was trying to push in Bay of Pigs and all that, because they did want war. And then a day after Kennedy was assassinated, we signed ourselves up for Vietnam.
Yep. Yeah.
LBJ did that.
There's these PSYOP meetings, not PSYOP. It's called, I think it's like SCIOP meetings. I forget what it stands for, but there was these meetings that him and RFK were both in, where the Joint Chiefs, Lemitzer and Maxwell Taylor, had this crazy plan, because that was the point in history where we had the most nukes and the Soviet Union had the least amount of nukes. Like that was when they first started to build up their arsenal. So we thought we could get away with just nuking half the planet.
Yeah,
and getting away with
not
it.
good in theory. We don't ever want to launch a nuke. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was obviously back channeling with the Russian president and trying to stop all that. And then, obviously like the CIA was involved. A lot of people like to say the CIA killed him, but John's theory is just like the CIA, there's certain
factions,
elements of the CIA who were involved in the cover up.
Exactly. So definitely certain factions involved in the cover up. Obviously you can't just like blanket label an organization. However, the CIA has done some interesting stuff. And I think when you look at some of the declassified files on their readingroom.gov website, you can see for yourself what they've looked into. It's very wild reads on a Friday night.
Yeah, I heard you talking about this. There's lots of crazy kooky. Have you ever heard of the CIA Gateway project?
Stargate?
No, not Stargate. This was called the Gateway.
No.
There's this guy named Itzhak Bentov, who was I forget what his specialty was, but he was like a genius. And they were studying him, and they were studying the brain with this gateway process, with a way for figuring out a way for the human brain to transcend dimensions.
Weird.
And it's all declassified. It's on there. Steve, pull up the gateway.
Bring us to the reading room.
Yeah. Pull up the documents.
I was
insane.
on this. I mean, sometimes when I'm bored, I'll go on it, and it's just the stuff that we've looked into. And it's funny because you say it, and if you don't have the documents to prove it, people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, these documents are
stuff.
weirder than science fiction.
Yeah, it's very weird, some of the stuff that they've gone into. It's like, you've seen all that stuff with the whole Captain America movies and, Hydra and all that crap. But I think it's largely based on these declassified documents, because you look at what really the relationship on MK Ultra that the U.S. government had with certain scientists, and it's very creepy.
So this Gateway declassified program, they declassified it, I think, with the... I forget when they declassified. I want to say in the 90s maybe. And they redacted one page.
Like one whole page. So it's just like a black blurb.
Yeah, it was like page 24. And then somebody, I think it was Robert Monroe, released it.
Oh, wait, go back to the illustration. I want to see what the top one, what is that? Galactic
Taurus?
South. So that's a representative of what, is that an atom or like a version of our universe that we're unaware of?
White hole. I don't know what.
Oh yeah,
okay, so this is the brain.
It's a depiction. It says universal nucleus hologram.
Can you punch in a little bit so we can read that text? Diagram of the cosmic egg. Go to the right. What does it say?
Is this supposed to be a representation of our universe?
I think it's like, what it's doing
in a parallel universe.
It's saying that the brain and the universe are like one thing. Like it's like we are the universe. Like it's like the whole point of it is like when we die, our consciousness molds into one universal consciousness.
We're created in God's image.
Well, here's the thing. There was one page that was redacted until Robert Monroe let it out. And the whole reason they redacted it is because it was like all about who God is.
So confirming God is real?
I don't know exactly. I don't think I've read it, but something about God, and that for some reason the CIA was like really interested in this stuff and like throwing money at it.
I mean, they threw money at trying to find the Ark of the Covenant.
Why would they redact a page about God?
I don't know. I think a lot of people, it's a lot easier to control people if you convince them that God's not real.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Imagine if people realized there was accountability after this life. how much society would change.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be easier to control?
I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Yep. I've seen this.
So the left hemisphere is like.
So the way that the brain dissects to interact with the universe.
Right. Yeah, this is just, it's trippy stuff. And if you watch videos of this guy, Itzhak Bentov, talk about consciousness, it's bizarre.
I think it's interesting though, because people, I think there's a very new age perspective on consciousness that tries to remove God from the theory and topic. And then you have a lot of these people, it's like kind of weird. In the UAP space, we meet a lot of interesting people.
Yeah, I bet.
But
the religious stuff and the UAP stuff is like melding.
But the thing is that the failure to recognize that God is real and that to cut God out of the equation, I think, like I'm a Christian through and through. So I don't look at it from that type of perspective, because I think that when you're opening yourself up to these energies, how the hell do you know what kind of energy you're opening yourself up to?
Right.
So I think that that's a very interesting thing, especially if like you're newer in your spiritual walk and you're kind of looking towards some of this stuff. It can be dangerous, but definitely interesting the CIA's looked into it. I think if you have time, go to the CIA reading room and you will find some most interesting reading material on Friday nights on that website.
Well, the crazy thing about the UFO
I actually love
stuff,
it. Yeah, I love
the crazy thing about the UFO stuff is there's so many parallels in ancient texts and the Bible and accounts of these UFOs, like before people
I would say
could do anything except for
technologies.
write down accounts of things. Like there's accounts of of objects coming out of the ocean in I think Richard Dolan was explaining to us, this was like in 1700s maybe, where just like these glowing orbs the size of football fields would come out of the ocean, where these like sailors on this ship would see it and then they would like write the account and like find it later and like find drawings of it. And this is this goes back into antiquity. So the question is were the angels UFOs, or are the UFOs angels? What came first? You know what I mean?
I was just listening. I wish I would have brought in the paper, but Plato talks about the legend of Atlantis. Plato was a smart guy. People read that and forget that the Atlantean civilization was a very advanced technological civilization. Where did they get that tech from? And then if you read the book of Enoch, which I would encourage everyone to read, a lot of people are like, oh, that's fake, shouldn't have been in the Bible. Well, actually, it was removed from the Bible because people wanted to gatekeep that information. It's still in the Ethiopian Orthodox text, which I would argue is the least watered down version of the Bible that you will get, because it has been in its original form since basically the beginning. And a lot of people don't know about the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, or the fact that they can trace their lineage all the way back to the ancient Israelites, okay? But why would they specifically remove this text? And it does talk about fallen angels and information, knowledge, all that was handed over to mankind. All I'm dealing though with in my task force is on the facts. And so the facts are, there's stuff that we can't explain, and there's information that's being hidden from the American people in Congress regarding that topic. So usually if someone's hiding something, you should probably ask why. And so the information that we released from our last hearing, actually Representative Burleson released it. It was a piece of footage that was dead dropped to him. And you can look at that, and that's pretty wild. You have a Hellfire missile hit one of these things and it deflects it. That's not a balloon. That's not a balloon.
Who filmed that? How did that get filmed? Was was that radar on a plane or something? Or what?
Yeah. It was from MQ-9. So
what's that in English?
Here, we'll Google it for the viewers. It's a surveillance.
Okay. A drone?
Well.
Okay. Yeah. MQ-9.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. It's our drones. AKA the Reaper is its common term.
Okay.
But it was some surveillance
about these things
footage.
before.
But you can pull that up, and a lot of people were like,
find the video of it, Steve.
Yeah, so even right before hearing, we had the former director of Arrow, Sean Kilpatrick. The guy's a total clown.
Yeah.
But he was attacking our witnesses. Why is he even involved in what Congress is saying or doing when he's like a documented liar? So yeah, we kind of proved him right with the hearing. That was good.
So
proved him right in the fact that, or proved him wrong in the sense that he has been gaslighting the American people.
Right. Going back to the Enoch stuff and the religious stuff, I've noticed a lot of, there's a lot of people online, and there's also a lot of people that write about like this connection between like biblical stuff and like the modern UFO stuff. And I feel like there is a weird faction of people in the government who are like battling on this UFO narrative.
I don't think it's like a battle. I think there's certain people that want to release classified videos and there's other people that don't. The fact is that these things, if they were a foreign government that had this type of tech, we wouldn't be number one, and we're still number one. But I think there's like very separate. So like we're talking specifically on like tech advancement and national security.
Yeah.
But then there's like a very separate religious perspective. And like, I think when you're talking about like biblical text, do many people know that the New King James Bible was actually rewritten? And why was it rewritten? Why were books removed? Why are there different Bibles in the Catholic text? Now, why are there different Bibles or books of the Bible in the Ethiopian Orthodox text? So there's like 88 books in total in the Ethiopian Orthodox text. And so like, I think that this gets into like a very religious perspective, but if you interchange, you know, the term alien, I don't call them alien. I say UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's what they commonly are termed as. We actually have a really high number of reporting here in Pinellas County.
Really?
Yeah, a very high number of people in the county have actually reported to see these things. And there's different hotspots around the world, but specifically in Alaska, definitely off the coast of Florida, around the Bermuda Triangle. So, you know, it's like not something, when I first started this stuff, they were like, oh, you're going to ruin your political career. And I've actually gotten more questions on this from people, very wealthy people, very powerful people, to your average Joe that pays attention to this because they realize they're like, there might be something there.
So the problem with the biblical stuff is that it's like this game of telephone, right? It's hard to know what actually happened 2,000 years ago or more than 2,000 years ago.
In what context, though?
Going back into antiquity.
Mm-hmm.
In a textual context or in a literary context, I'm talking about like going down to the bones of the language, right? Because like how many people do you know that can read ancient Greek fluently?
Or Aramaic.
Well, Aramaic and Hebrew. I mean, Hebrew only has, 7,000 unique words?
That's why I like the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible.
Ancient Greek has over 1.2 million unique words. The Library of Alexandria was all Greek. There was no Hebrew. Mm-hmm. And when you go into antiquity, everything was written in Greek. The medical text, the legal text, the philosophical text, the historical, the comedy, everything was Greek. The only Hebrew is the Dead Sea Scrolls. The only Hebrew is religious stuff, and there's only 7,000 words. I've met maybe one or two people that can read Greek really, really well. And they're all, and you know, on top of that, there's, like you said, there's the Enoch book. There's all these other books that are left out that like go way against the narrative. And, you know, you can imagine if you're trying to create some sort of a, like Plato would call it, a noble lie for society, to keep society in line and to help your civilization thrive, you would want to take out some of that stuff and put in some of the good stuff, maybe change the meanings of some words. And over 2,000 years, just think like something you had for lunch 10 years ago or even last week, like your memory is so inaccurate from what actually happened. Now take it 10,000 years, or I'm sorry, 2,000 years, and translating it through different languages, through different text, through church fathers who are making money by preaching this stuff, and, you know, having the Council of Nicaea, depending on trying to come to an agreement of what it's going to be. Yeah, which Bible? Like, it's just like,
I'm glad you brought them up.
We don't know. We have no clue what actually happened back then. And there's absolutely people who had an axe to grind and a narrative to push. And
Ethiopian Orthodox text is direct translation, hasn't changed. It literally, in the 5th century.
What language is it in?
The Ethiopian language. If we can pull it up.
Find out what language the Ethiopian
has not
Orthodox
changed.
text is.
The whole story on how and allegedly the Ark of the Covenant is housed in Ethiopia. Allegedly, right? There's a story there. But you kind of look at the fact that I believe it was the Council of Nicaea that actually replaced Enoch, the book of Enoch with Revelations.
Right.
You read Revelations, you're like, what the heck? Mm-hmm. So I would encourage everyone to read it. It makes a lot of sense if you read it. There's perspective.
Have you ever read the infancy gospel
of Jesus?
Yeah. Where he kills a kid?
I've looked into it. Well, he gets like angry, the kid falls.
Yeah.
And he brings him back to life.
Yeah. No, he doesn't bring him back to life.
I think he calls him back to life because they're like, did you do this? And then he comes back and he's like, no, I fell. Jesus didn't, or yes, you didn't do it.
The Ethiopian Orthodox Church uses Guess?
Yeah,
That's what it's
guess.
called?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So it's just like...
It's preserved for spiritual and scholarly purposes, so it really hasn't changed. It's a very ancient language.
Right. Right. And then like also, I've had a lot of theologians in here I've talked to. And it's like it's just kind of weird to me how people will dedicate their entire education, go to college for 8 years and to get a PhD in a science, right? Like you're studying the science of these ancient texts and translating the Bible and figuring out what it meant, but simultaneously subscribe to the belief, right? I don't have a problem with it, right? I have no problem with whatever your belief is. If it makes you a better person, God bless you. But isn't it a conflict of interest when you're actually studying a science of something and you simultaneously believe in it? Like people, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then, yeah.
Well, or I like the stories of people that have not started out as believers and then try to debunk the Bible and then end up not being able to and then becoming believers.
Yes.
Those are always
it goes both ways.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. And there's people who
I think though there's a really big portion of this discussion that when you have certain texts that are removed and have been known to be removed because they didn't adhere to whatever standard was. So I think the Book of Enoch was removed in the 5th century because it wasn't in line with what the Torah was. But the ancient Ethiopian Orthodox do have ties to the tribes of Israel, and they do think that it was actually something that they would consider a sacred text. And then you actually read what Enoch talks about. It's not like too crazy to be like, there's something there on this. But that would get into the more the philosophical. So then you have this aspect of UAP. So what are these things? And I mean, it talks about in ancient history, the legend of Atlantis and the technology that was given to mankind. Maybe it could be an explanation. I don't know. People should look it up. And
the Atlantis thing's so interesting. It's so fascinating. But like, again, it's such an old text. And the game of Steve, I know you have this. We got to pull this up. You have the chain of transmission for Atlantis. We've talked about this so much on here, like ad nauseum. So I'm sorry for everyone who's listened to this 100,000 times.
Yeah.
The chain of transmission for Atlantis is actually like 10 times crazier than any religious text. Like it's
and like the legends of Atlantis.
The legends, like there's thousands of years of just verbal.
Plato had to go to Egypt to hear about the legend of Atlantis and then reported it in his text.
Yep. And there's Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger, Solon, the Egyptian priest, and it wasn't written down until like 10,000 years after it was orally,
very ancient
explained to somebody.
That existed. Yeah, pretty wild.
But like Plato, he was also not a historian. He was a philosopher, and he would come up with theoretical, hypothetical, like social experiments, or like what do they call it? You're good. Like war game experiments. And some people think that he came up with the allegory of the cave. And they think that this was like some people, like the skeptics, I guess you could call them, try to say this was like a hypothetical war game between Athens and like some other advanced civilization. Okay, so the destruction of Atlantis.
Wild war game. Glad our U.S. government doesn't do this.
Oh yeah, of course not. 9,000 years before Solon's Critias, right? So was the destruction of Atlantis. So oral history goes on for 1,000 years. Written down by the Egyptians 8,000 years before Solon. Of course, there's no actual writings. Priest records it, or the priest reads the records. Years pass. He tells the memory to Solon without consulting written records. Solon tells his relatives. Dropides tells his son Critias the Elder. At age 90, he tells his grandson.
Yeah.
And then 50 years later, Plato writes it down. Like
wild.
10,000 years. How many years of oral transmission is that? 8,000, 9,000 years? It's just like, it's wild.
If we had a time machine, it would be interesting to go back and see what happened. Give me a time machine for a day. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. But yeah, no. So like the UAP thing is interesting too. How like there is evidence. I mean, I don't know if you want to call it evidence, but there's connections in things like Enoch and these stories that suggest, and philosophers have suggested this, and like, people like me who nerd out in the UFO topic, that this could be some civilization that's lived here on Earth for over 1 million years. and they could just be underground, or they could have been a breakaway civilization or something like this, part of Atlantis. If Atlantis was real and it was a super advanced civilization and there was a cataclysm, if God sent the flood, they escaped. And now maybe they've come back when things have calmed down and they live here in like a higher dimension, similar to like we live on the same, like we live next to ants, but they don't know we're there.
Yeah. So, and the whistleblowers that I've talked to, the ones that Grush explained it the best, but never calls it alien, interdimensional. Maybe. What's interesting is based on the videos that are publicly out there, these things are operating in a way that defy physics as we currently know it. So there is some there to this, but I'm just going off of what I've seen and what evidence has been presented to me, and then testimony from whistleblowers.
What's the craziest thing you've seen?
Probably one of the craziest would probably be the video of the Hellfire missile being deflected by one of these things. That's pretty wild if you think about it. But we've had different briefings, and we want to push for the declassification of the stuff that we've seen, because I think that there's an overclassification, and there's been other governments that have basically already decided to do the same thing and talk about this publicly. I think that the U.S. government set a trend with our neighbors in South America, for sure.
Really?
On this topic, yeah, in regards to addressing it. But, this stuff doesn't need to be gate kept. And I think there has been a generational change in how we approach this. So the baby boomer generation was largely the generation that was impacted by the whole Project Blue Book to kind of take this stuff and really make it sound crazy. Whereas millennials and even Gen X are like, there might be some there. And now that there's been this evolution of tech and people being able to record things on your cell phone. I mean, we've had many credible people, military service members, pilots, Commander Fravor that literally was like a Top Gun pilot, be able to say, hey, we don't have this in our arsenal. We don't know what it is. We've had whistleblowers come forward saying that they were intimidated not to come forward, or they were in fear of their life because they came forward, all this stuff. So there's something there. We have an open door policy in that we'll talk to people, we'll bring people into SCIF. But then also at the same sense, I've seen kind of this disinformation campaign online specifically with whenever we try to do this, people coming out trying to discredit. It's like, well, if we're not asking questions, no one's going to ask questions. And then there was a lot of chatter trying to discredit the task force prior to the hearing. And then after we had the hearing, they disappeared like cockroaches with the lights on. And so I think that there is an effort to try to still kind of keep this stuff under wraps. But I think there's too many people.
To the Boeing whistleblowers.
We should have called in Boeing and asked about that. But we've had, it's the biggest bicameral and bipartisan issue.
What made you want to get involved in the whole UFO stuff?
I did not lead out the efforts. It was Representative Burchett, who's been on this for a while. And then we suggested a hearing on it last year or last Congress. And that's when you saw the David Grush hearing take place, which was one of the most widely watched and attended hearings in congressional history. And then after people realized that they wouldn't be called crazy, then they designated the task force to kind of look into it, because everyone in Congress is curious. Everyone. So that's what we do on our free time. And there's a lot to do. So this is kind of something that we've been able to do when we're not, battling it out on other issues in Washington.
Yeah. It's just crazy that it seems like these private contractors have been able to get away with this for so long. It seems like since the creation of the CIA.
So I've had a lot of people say that it's contractors that are housing this tech, but I haven't been able to get a whistleblower to come forward yet on that because of fear of retribution from what we're hearing from these whistleblowers. But the information that we have seen has come out of the Department of Defense. And we have been personally denied access before by the DoD. And even up until recently, we're told that we do not have access as members of Congress to these programs. So we have to then go above the DoD to the executive branch and request access to investigate. But there have been other agencies that have briefed us on certain things. And I already know that these things are out there. So I'm not it's not changing my mind or perspective, but it's just confirmation of what we already know.
Wasn't that the whole purpose of pushing this stuff into private contractors, so it wouldn't have congressional oversight and we wouldn't be able to FOIA it?
But there's still certain parts of the federal government that deny Congress access, right? So that's a problem, because we're supposed to be the check and balance. And I think that that's been like decades of lazy Congress. So I'm one member of Congress. I know I'll get people all the time that are like, I'm not going to vote for you again. I said, well, that's great because you're in California. You can't vote for me anyways. So, we'll get those threatening calls from like California and New York. But the good news is that residents in Pinellas appreciate it. And one of the top issues is looking into government corruption. And I would say if you have whistleblowers that are being threatened by government contractors or there's allegations of it, well, we're going to follow up and kind of see what's there. But it is kind of funny. People are like, you're basically asking the question that every kid asked in grade school growing up. And like, you're actually bringing the answers like JFK, UAPs, we're looking into it.
They're the biggest questions.
And we're finding answers and we're like, here's the evidence. This is what we got. And people are like, and it's kind of, so there's a lot of people that are curious about it at this point.
What do you think it's going to take to actually get some sort of real substantive stuff instead of random grainy videos?
Well, that's not just a random grainy video. That's off of MQ9.
Can you find it, Steve? Can you find it? How do we search for it?
It should be on my X platform. Yeah, just MQ9, Hellfire missile deflected by UAP. Is that it? No. Is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Is there any audio, Steve?
Boom, deflected. Deflected. Like, it's crazy.
Oh, no, there's no audio.
And then it does this weird blob thing, and then it just rolls together.
And where was this allegedly?
Off the coast of Africa.
Whoa.
Where's Burleson? Good old Burleson. There's our whistleblowers.
Steve, I got no volume. Oh, there we go.
The little blob thing kind of moved in its other direction with the blob.
That's so crazy. But if I was a foreign military or a private military contractor and I did have this technology, I would absolutely try to convince everybody that it was aliens and not my stuff. Especially if I was government, I would definitely do
based
that.
on the testimony from this, back in the 90s, the Soviet government had a task force looking into this because these things flew over a Russian nuke silo and activated all their nukes.
Yeah.
And those nukes were aimed at the United States and they were freaking out and they weren't able to shut them off. And then these things shut them off and then they left. And the Soviet government was like, don't engage with these things ever again. And that's actually part of the documents that George Knapp smuggled out of the Soviet Union at the time. Wow, allegedly, according to these documents.
Because the same exact thing happened here.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And then you can hear the testimony from the witnesses. So it's like not me making the stuff up. I'm not just like pulling this out. This is directly, and you can see the documents that have been actually entered into the congressional record. I would use an app to translate it, but those are all Russian documents and they were confirmed separately by the DIA.
Did you pay attention to any of those Wall Street Journal articles that came out about a month or two ago about how
saying that it was a disinformation campaign?
It was a disinformation psyop against people working at the nuclear sites, specifically the one in Montana. The name of it is escaping me right now, but they were saying that like it was the military testing EMPs to see if they could take the nukes offline.
Yeah, very interesting that they've had these issues around the world. So,
and
what a big psyop.
Jesse Michaels did an amazing video about those articles, and he like found that one of the primary contributor to that first Wall Street Journal article on her LinkedIn, just open in broad daylight, go to her LinkedIn, like the first thing on her LinkedIn says, head of psychological operations for Northrop Grumman.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's weird to connect.
Saying that these are like some like elaborate hazing rituals for these nuclear base commanders and these Air Force guys.
Wild. They apparently did that in Russia too. I don't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's no way. It doesn't make any sense why we would test EMPs on live nukes and then the nukes would just come right back on right afterwards.
I think I saw that, but it didn't get much traction. I think videos like this are a good way to inoculate with the truth. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't hold subpoena authority. It's up to my chairman.
Yeah.
He'll issue certain subpoenas depending. So we've been, going back to what happened with, some of these apps, Discord coming out with the whole Charlie Kirk shooting, saying we have no information. The CEO of Discord's coming in, Reddit, some other apps are going to be coming in as well to testify before Congress on what they're doing about this stuff, because Discord's been very interesting, not to pivot fully from this, but in the fact that a lot of this rhetoric, and weirdly enough, a lot of these shooters have been using these apps and we don't have any information on who's contacting or handling or encouraging these people. And it's something that we should look into, especially because politicians are literally getting killed, and people that are engaged in the political discussion are literally getting murdered.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely crazy that our FBI and our CIA can't track that stuff down.
Well, they can now. I think before they didn't want to.
At now, meaning when? Like, so when did that
start? With the change of administration. So the Secret Service was at the direction of Joe Biden prior to President Trump assuming office.
Wasn't the lady who was the head of the Secret Service, wasn't she like previously working for Pepsi or something? Or Coke?
I don't think so, but I know that she resigned shortly thereafter. So she
Maybe you can find that, Steve. I heard that. I forgot who told me that. It might have been Mike Benz. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised based on her response. Would not be surprised. But, you know, all that to say, we need more young people to run for office, more good people. I got in and I have been very disappointed with how it functions internally. And then you realize a lot of these people, they could make a difference, but they don't want to. And they fall within this kind of groupthink.
Yep, PepsiCo, director of global security at Pepsi.
So that's interesting. She was recruited by the Secret Service. What were her qualifications? Yeah, I mean, both Democrats and Republicans were like, you need to resign.
Yeah.
And she perjured herself and then she resigned. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So who are the reptilians that are controlling all this, Anna?
I don't know that there's lizard people that I've seen yet. So
They didn't come sit you down on your first day at Congress and say, Anna, listen.
No.
Because you imagine there's got to be somebody.
No, I don't think it's somebody.
There's got to be a group of people, whether they're connected or not, whether it's like a decentralized group of folks that have had discussions about like, look, if they've had this stuff since the 40s and they've been able to psyop people and obfuscate and throw disinformation at this problem for this long, there's a very strong reason that they've come to, or conclusion that they've come to, that the public knowing this stuff, it would be very bad for national security. Like, I imagine they have a very legit reason for not letting it out.
I don't know. I think it's I think perspective generationally on how to address it, because videos have come out. I mean, literally Tucker Carlson showed a declassified video and everyone was like, wow, that's wild. Crazy. What is it? We'll never know. And then move past it.
Now, isn't there an issue of like,
they showed it on Fox News.
Certain people would get in trouble if this stuff came out. Like there would be financial crimes, black budgets, and like there would be
there's definitely an issue with the amount of government wasteful spending, and the Pentagon up until recently hasn't passed an audit, and I don't know how many years. By the way, I mean, this goes into why are we sending money to Ukraine? Apparently Zelensky's like wiring $50 million a month to some Saudi bank. Yeah. That's weird. 50 million USD. This is, I get it. For issues of national security, there are certain programs that should not be public for the American people. However, when you have people coming forward and saying that there is no government oversight, right? Like, we're given classified briefings on a regular basis to information, but when you have Congress that's supposed to be the oversight authority being denied access or told that they don't have clearance, that's a problem, because then you have that information that's now operating without oversight. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. Like, how is this being done legally if you don't have accountability for that? But that's not just this topic specifically. There's that issue that also exists with covert programs that previously existed with the intelligence agencies. So this is an ongoing issue, which is why we should publicly talk about it and discuss it, because sunlight's the best form of disinfectant.
Right, right. But
so this is like not just specifically to this issue.
Yeah. But there's people that speculate that this like 25 trillion whatever dollar black hole in the Pentagon's budget could have been contributing to some of this stuff.
I know that Tim Burchett has definitely gone on record with that, and I don't think that he's necessarily wrong, because we've been denied access to certain clearances or been denied access to certain programs, which is wrong. If you're an oversight arm of the federal government, why would you not be given clearance, especially when you do have a top clearance for that? So definitely problematic in that sense, but I have yet to see evidence on paper of that specifically, if that makes sense. So I like to talk about, I don't necessarily like to speculate. I like to just go off basically what I have been presented with and the fact-finding mission that we've been given. And so I think that we will continue to push for the declassified version of stuff that we've been able to see, because I think that belongs to the American people. But the perspective on whether the American people can handle it, the American people can handle it. I think that this gets into the sense of if you can't explain something, how do you then present that? But the good news is that it's not a foreign government, because if it was a foreign government, we would be number 2 and we're still number 1. So I do think, though, that there are many governments that have looked into this based on what we've been told and what we have now evidence of, according to the documentation submitted by George Knapp.
What was the thing you were asking Ryan Graves about? Like something red that came out of the ocean?
So Ryan Graves had initially told me about the Vandenberg Air Force Base incident. And actually the individual that witnessed that, the firsthand witness, actually testified to me at the last hearing. And you can actually pull up if you go to YouTube and you type in Rep Luna Vandenberg Air Base, you'll probably see the witness testimony as to what they saw appear over the air base. It was wild. I mean, this is like firsthand witness accounts of a security force.
And it was allegedly like in the early 2000s?
Yep. And it was, I think, like a football field or 2 wide, which is wild to hear. And then here we go. No, don't go to that one. Go to the first hand.
Graves?
No, go down. It's going to be at the last hearing. Wow, there's a ton on. Yeah, there's a lot. UAP. Type in UAP hearing Vandenberg Air Base. Don't put my name on it.
UAP hearing Vandenberg Air Base.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
The top one?
Yep. That's him. First-hand whistleblower account.
Morning. Thank you, Chairwoman Luna, Ranking Member Crockett, and members of the
is that James Fox right behind him? Look at that.
For giving us the opportunity to
this is the actual witness.
Yeah.
My name is Jeffrey Nusatelli. I'm a former military police officer
you hit it
with
at double
16
speed.
years of active duty service in the U.S. Air Force. I'm here today because the American people have both the right and the responsibility to know the truth about unidentified aerial phenomenon. That truth remains hidden, classified, and silenced by fear, retaliation, stigma, and confusion.
He goes into a full description of this also later on in the questioning. You have to watch the hearing. The hearing was like 2 hours long or something like that.
Right.
Top national security priority. At the time, we were conducting launches deemed by the National Reconnaissance Office as the most important in 25 years. These were historic launches. These facilities were vital, and they were repeatedly visited by UAP.
About the,
each incident was witnessed by multiple personnel, documented, investigated, and reported up the chain of command. We sent information up, but we got no guidance down on how to handle these events. I personally witnessed one of these events and investigated others as they occurred. 6 other service members have provided me with the information that I will share with you today. The incursions began on October 14th, 2003, when Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over 2 missile defense sites. After several minutes, it drifted further east onto the base and vanished over the hills. This event, now known as the Vandenberg Red Square, was referenced by Representative Luna at the first hearing on this topic. Official Air Force records of this event are in possession by Aero and the FBI. Later that night, while I was on duty, security guards at a critical launch site reported a bright, fast-moving object over the ocean. I responded to the incident. Chaos ensued over the radio as the object approached rapidly. I heard my friends screaming, "It's coming right at us, it's coming right for us, and now it's right here." Moments later, I heard them say that it had shot off and was gone. When I arrived on scene, I talked to 5 shaken witnesses who described a massive, triangular craft, larger than a football field, that hovered silently for about 45 seconds over their entry control point before shooting away at impossible speed. About a week later, another patrol reported a light over the ocean, behaving erratically. Leaving it might be an unannounced aircraft, they declared an emergency. An armed response force responded.
So we had him, the chief next to him is still actually active duty in the Navy. So we had for the first time, an active duty service member coming to testify on the topic. And then 2 other, we had George Knapp and then another individual who Borland, I think is his last name. He actually faced a lot of retribution for coming forward on this. So they try they try to go after his VA medical history, all of that. And we actually saw
who went after it?
Whoever these people are, like people within the government. But that's not the first time that we had a vet have their records leaked or attacked after coming forward. So Grush had his
just shadow people are releasing this. Like we don't know who.
Well, yeah, it's like an inside job, botch job on their reputation to try to discredit them. So shortly after Grush had testified, someone leaked his medical records out of the VA.
Right.
To try to discredit him.
That's crazy. I mean,
yeah.
This is like the Streisand effect, right? Like when you're attacking these people who are coming out and saying this stuff and trying to like deliberately ruin their reputation.
They try to ruin Borland's life. He's later on. You need to watch the whole hearing. It was pretty wild. So anyways, all that to say that we just go on facts. The facts speak for themselves. I don't tell people what to believe, but I can tell you that I've seen some pretty wild stuff in this task force.
The giant red square coming out of the water is just totally insane.
But it's not just him. It was multiple other people that saw it.
Yeah.
And there's reports allegedly housed at Arrow. I've had not a good experience with Arrow. I would like to defund Arrow altogether. I think they're a waste of a program.
Yeah. Out of all the people you've talked to and like all the skiffs you've been in and all these whistleblowers that you've interacted with, if you were just to take I know you don't like to speculate, but if you were to bet on like what this stuff could be coming from, like what do you think? Do you think intergalactic space aliens? Do you think it's time traveling humans, breakaway human civilization?
I call it non-human intelligence.
Angels and demons, like Tucker Carlson thinks it is.
So Grush does a good way of outlining this in a way that's very factual, and he calls it NHI. I think an older term for that would be what Tucker Carlson probably calls as angels and demons. So but it's interesting.
From where though?
But that's the thing, is we don't know. Like, it's not like I can be like, beam me up, Scotty, and answer the questions. But
I know you don't know, but I'm just saying, like, what would if you were in Vegas?
I don't know that answer, but what I can tell you is it's been interesting because, you know, we go back to some of these very old texts that talk about this that were somehow removed from the Bible, which is also a weird conversation, but it's pretty straightforward in what those things are. So I don't like to tell people what to believe. What I can do is present you with the facts and tell you to read a book. You should probably read the book and then draw your own conclusions.
Mm-hmm. I had this NASA dude on here, Kevin Knuth. You know him? So he worked for NASA for a while, and he was a physicist for NASA. And he believes that these things, whatever they are in the oceans exclusively because all different planets throughout the solar system have crazy different atmospheres, right? Like they have different gravity, they have different they have different levels of gas and oxygen and whatever it is in their atmosphere. They're highly vulnerable to like meteor impacts or comet impacts, volcanoes, you name it. Also, atmospheres can be gas, all different kinds of the temperature can vary like thousands of degrees in the atmosphere. But what he was explaining was on all the different planets, all the different moons in our solar system, the water temperature, water can only exist between 33 degrees and like 200 degrees.
It's a controlled state.
So it's like a very, very controlled environment. So if you were another species and you were hopping from planet to planet, you would look for the planets with the water. And we're like, we are a water world. If you can look at our planet, look at the Pacific Ocean, and there's no land. It's just all ocean. So like that would make and that kind of like blew my mind the way he explained that to me. He's like, you would just hop from water world to water world to water world because you have this perfect environment.
I would say though you would want to hop. You would do time travel if you could,
or
interdimensional something. Look, I don't have all the answers, but what I will say is that just based on the stuff that we've seen, there's definitely something there. I don't believe when people try to gaslight the situation because I've just seen too much publicly out there available evidence to include things that I have seen that aren't publicly available that I do believe tell a different story. And I think though that with social media, the ability for people to do their own research, I think that it's really kind of created this environment where people have access to more information than any other time in U.S. history. And so I'm simply here to present the facts. And I think that this is one of those questions. I think when you don't talk about these things or you try to prevent the conversation from happening, that's where you get the weird conspiracy theories, right? I think the way that the federal government handled JFK was wrong.
Yes.
I think that the way that the federal government handled MLK was wrong and RFK. And so being able to just put this out there and let people do their own homework and research is the best. I think that as soon as everything is concluded with the trial for Charlie Kirk, I think that they need to release that information too, because I do think that in the name of Charlie receiving justice, the American people need to know the truth. And I do trust that J.D. Vance, the president, myself, Kash Patel, all have an invested interest in figuring out what actually happened and who should be held accountable. If Tyler was acting alone, fine, he was acting alone, but let's see the evidence. But I do think that there were people that had knowledge of that because of how they reacted after the assassination. Everyone freaked out, deleted pages and information. China's tied to this foreign funding aspect of Salt Lake City queers. It goes back to Singham, who's targeting and doing the violent riots even just months ago. There's targeted media campaigns calling people that are typically conservative leaning or right wing leaning as fascists, Nazis, that deserve and make it okay to assassinate these people. And then you have your stupid idiots that repeat the narrative talking points and they fundraise off of it in Washington. So yes, they are responsible. They do own that because you have to realize that when you're an elected position, official and in that position, you have a certain level of influence and you have to be careful about
Steve, is her audio okay? Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure you kind of far from the mic. Is she good?
If she could scoop a little to the right, that'd be
Scoot a little that way.
That's
Just make
right.
sure you're on camera. Make sure you're in the center of the frame.
And stigmatizing Americans in that way, because really, like, even just on the topic of ICE raids or immigration, Barack Obama was known as the deporter in chief, and Joe Biden put kids in Connex boxes. Everyone forgets about that right prior to getting elected. You had Hillary Clinton that had the same perspective, and Chuck Schumer on illegal immigration. And yet all of a sudden, you have Republicans or conservatives or people that want strong, even moderates.
Hillary Clinton was MAGA as hell in the 90s.
Yeah, she's like based 101 in the 90s.
Yeah.
What happened? You know, was it bad for fundraising for the Clinton Foundation?
We watched this clip of her talking about deporting illegals from like 98 or something like that.
Yeah, she would be the face of MAGA now. She really would be, which is the irony in all this. I actually was just on a documentary on the 14th Amendment with Netflix, and we were talking about this, and I'm like, these are the same perspectives. Like, the Republican Party hasn't shifted perspective on their perspective on immigration. The Democrat Party has. Like, they literally, and I'll get into the specifics of this. So when I started to get politically involved and active, like really 2018, but you can see in 2016, Democrats and Republicans, for the most part, had a very strong perspective and standpoint as tail end of Obama administration, right, on illegal immigration. Obama said, don't come here, okay? He literally is on record saying that.
Yep.
Then you have, in 2016, the start of outpacing of the Black minority community by the Hispanic American minority community. And not just any Hispanic minority, it's specifically Americans of Mexican descent. So why all of a sudden in 2016, with the rise of Hispanic Americans now being the largest voting minority, do you have a shift in the talking points from Black Americans to now Hispanic Americans, and specifically on immigration? What could possibly cause that? Well, it was because they are trying to target the voting minority bloc for election purposes. What they didn't realize is that Hispanic Americans, specifically Mexican Americans, actually largely voted in favor of President Trump's platform because they don't want illegal immigration. So it backfired. But you see this,
especially
all of a sudden,
the Cubans.
The Cubans especially, but specifically they're targeting the largest voting minority in history. So why do you think we saw Neville Singham funding the Timu riots, which is what I call the riots in LA, on ICE? They were literally passing out Mexican flags, brand new Mexican flags. Why just the Mexican flag? Why not the Honduran flag or El Salvadorian flag or the Cuban flag? Why specifically that flag? And it was because they wanted to create the optics to resonate with a voting base, where you now have people that are of Mexican descent saying, oh, you know, they're deporting my people. Bullshit, they're deporting sex offenders. Are your people sex offenders and child molesters and rapists? Last time I checked, I'm American, but I don't own that shit. Deport them. I don't want them here. In fact, I don't even know why we're deporting them. I think that they should, if you are victimizing children like that, especially, why deport them? Capital punishment all the way. Like, I do not think that people like that can be rehabilitated, and I think that they're very bad people. This gets into the whole argument of due process. Due process applies to American citizens. Just because you're here illegally does not guarantee you due process, because you're not a U.S. citizen. So fine, deport them. But in general, these people, for them to exploit specifically because of polling, to target for elections, they don't actually care who's hurt in the process. They just care about getting elected. And that's what this is really about. I remember in, I think it was 2018, and I don't personally agree with the pathways to citizenship for DACA, okay? But President Trump had a plan that he presented to Nancy Pelosi on DACA, and she did not take the plan. Remember, Barack Obama created DACA. I think that they created it to create a...
What does it stand for?
Deferred action.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you look up the full...
Yeah, look up
DACA. But it was created by Barack Obama at that famous Rose Garden ceremony. I believe that was done not as a solution, but as a foreshadowing future political talking point and leverage point for that demographic, because they saw at that point in time the rise of Hispanic Americans as a targeting voting minority, and it's all about controlling the election cycle and the voters. So Pelosi, the Democrats actually at that point in time, and she was largely protested because of it, they actually did not do anything about it. So immigration has been one of those things in Congress that both sides benefit from the division on it. Both sides fundraise. I don't think they'll ever actually provide a solution for it, because
that's so crazy.
They benefit from it. But that's the truth, because they've had multiple options too, and they didn't. Then you have on my side where you have Republicans that represent large agriculture communities that don't want E-Verify, that would actually force farmers to actually hire American citizens because it's cheaper for them to hire illegals. Yes. But then they're also hiring children. And so hiring children, that's not hiring children, that's slave labor. When you hire a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, Tyson Chicken Farm got busted on that. Kid lost his arm in one of their meat processing facilities. Why is a 14
How old was the kid?
Like 14 or 15. And you can look up that article, but the point is that this has been very frustrating because the system, because of decades of this mentality, is broken. So the only way to actually fix the system is to put a temporary pause in the immigration process and let it catch up for people that are trying to come here legally, which, by the way, my office handles a lot of cases for people that are trying to do it the right way. And it can take sometimes up to 20 years for people now because of how bogged down the system is, because there's not enough judges, attorneys. All of the illegals that came in are taking away resources, time, court appointments, all of that. They're not actually waiting in line. They're breaking the law and coming here, and they're essentially trying to cut the line and doing what they're doing. And that's not fair. Yeah. And so you put a pause, you let the system catch up, deport the illegals. And if people want to come here the right way, do it the right way. But you can't cut the line, and you can't just show up and expect us to roll out the red carpet for you.
And the cartels are making money hand over fist, trafficking people over here.
Now they haven't, right? So like we've seen a decline in the number of illegals coming here, but during the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration, when they were running on this stuff, absolutely they were making a killing. And they're killing people in the process.
Yeah. There was a
And by the way, there's like separately, aside from like the Hispanic voting bloc issue and targeting of politics, they literally were letting in terrorists. Like multiple members of the known terrorist watch list were released into US territory.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Insane.
That they allowed that to happen.
The best immigration policy that I think made the most sense that I've ever heard of was came out right before 9/11, I think. And when 9/11 happened, like the whole thing just got exploded and it never happened. And I think it was basically what it was that Mexicans could come across the border legally to work, and they would
a work permit.
They would have to spend at least 6 months of the year in Mexico. So they could come here, they could work for 6 months. They would obviously have to pay taxes and all that stuff.
Deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA. Yeah.
Oh, that's what DACA is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, and then for the remainder of the year, they would have to go back to Mexico. And I was like, man, that makes so much sense. Like, come here, find a way to get them to pay taxes. They can work their job. These people that are running these companies that benefit off them, they're gonna have to find a middle ground where they're not just gonna have to pay, get out of jail free card to pay these people nothing and benefit from illegal immigration. I have a friend who runs a huge commercial concrete company, and 99% of his people are Mexicans, and a lot of them are illegals. And like, because no one else wants to work. Like these guys, these guys aren't rapists or not serial killers. They're not committing crimes. They're young Mexican dudes with families who, like, all they want to do, like their biggest gripe is they can't work 10 days a week. They want to work Monday through Sunday all day long.
Yeah.
And so they're not, and
this gets into a larger discussion though. And like in the 90s you had, and previous to that, I think it was under Clinton, NAFTA, which like completely destroyed the Mexican economy. And then you have cartels literally running Mexico. So it is what it is with that.
Yeah.
So you have people, and there's been a vacuum created by like the amount of drug dependence from Americans onto the drug economy that the countries in South America, with the exception of El Salvador and a few others, the gangs are essentially running these countries. And so we're the biggest consumer for that product. And so there's been decades long things that have been flawed within the institution of government and Congress, because I think just good people don't want to run for office. I'm like very convinced. Some of the people that I deal with, wow, I sometimes question why do it. But the perspective up there is that, this is just kind of the status quo. And if you have good relationships, if you have a zero tolerance on drugs in this country, on a lot of the crimes that we're seeing, it does have a ripple effect, third and fourth order. It does impact other countries. The things that we say, our policies here, do impact the countries, people wanting to come here, work, economy, all of that. I mean, you have a lot of people that were programmed into thinking that your typical 4-year degree is like the way of making it in life.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was actually just at a meeting with a couple of manufacturer and construction-based companies here in Pinellas County. And we have a really good program that exists for people that are doing trade schools. But a lot of people look down on if you're in the construction industry or you're an electrician or you're a welder or a crane operator. I got news for you. Those people straight up out of high school are making six figures. You can make great money in those industries, but we've been so programmed and like dumbed down as society.
Everyone wants to be a YouTuber. Yeah,
everyone wants to be a YouTuber or an Instagram person.
Right.
And when TikToker. And China has been largely a part of that. They don't show their kids twerking videos on TikTok in China. Right. They show them how to be an astronaut. You want to be a physicist? Like, that's cool to them. Here, it's quite the opposite. So you have society that's really been dumbed down, and it's because of how lazy and I think the lack of oversight and conviction of elected officials. But this has been decades long. Like, you have people that have been in office for longer than I've been alive. Like,
that's so crazy.
By a significant, and they're like, the government's broken. Yeah, because your asses voted us into this brokenness and we're trying to fix it. But there's not enough young people with that perspective. So Congress is true. I think the average age, we're in one of the oldest Congresses, I think, in U.S. history. I think the average age is like 60 plus, 70 years old. So when you have people that are on the way out, do you think they really care about ballooning debt?
No. They're just trying to line their investment accounts.
Yeah, and so we try to ban insider trading. And I actually am leading that charge right now with actually 27 other Republican and Democrats members of Congress. And I was told that I was going to prevent members of Congress from sending their children to college. And I was like, I don't think insider trading.
You're going to prevent them from sending their kids to college?
I was like, I don't know that. I'm pretty sure that that's illegal. But so yeah, I was told that I was going to, destroy the republic and cost us the midterms and force my colleagues to take bad votes. And I was like, well, if they want to go trade stocks, do it on Wall Street. Don't do it in Congress. So we're trying to force that right now. But Congress does get access to information. We have meetings with CEOs, market information. We know when the policy is going to be hitting the markets. We know when to buy. And anyone that tells you that they don't have some special knowledge into stock trading is lying to you, because we do.
Yeah.
And that's why you see these people go and making $175,000 a year become multimillionaires.
Mm-hmm. What about lobbying?
What about it?
Seems kind of like a dirty game.
Yeah, it is. And you can be a member of Congress and go right into lobbying, and that's also illegal, which is also not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it's just a way for corporations to run the country.
Yeah, so I was talking to a parliament member in the UK, and they actually don't. The UK does a lot of stuff backwards, to be clear, but the one thing that they do correctly is the finance law that they have. So there's only a certain amount of money that you can spend. Lobbyists don't typically they actually don't allow lobbying directly to members of the parliament like they do here. And it is crazy. You can see on opensecrets.org who takes what money.
Yeah.
Because of, I guess, like my brand of elected official, I don't really get a lot of special interest money from DC. So I have a lot more small dollars. But also, initially in my first election that I won in 2022, my seat cost an estimate combined between both Democrat and Republican money spent. It was like upwards of $20 million. So what people can afford to do that or even fundraise, like, to the tune that you need to for a congressional seat, like millions of dollars. That's why you have a lot of self-funders, which there are some people that are self-funders that are doing it for the right reasons. But then you have a lot of people that are not doing it for the right reasons. So I joke that this is my $20 million piece of jewelry because it's my pin for Congress and it's how much it costs to get elected. But that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
$20 million can do a lot. And it's just ridiculous that it takes that much money to get elected.
Yeah, it's crazy that you can like look up the people who are funding everybody, and then you can just basically, it translates directly into the laws they try to pass or they vote against or don't vote against.
Yeah, exactly. There's people on both sides.
It's transparent, which is crazy.
Yeah. So like, here's an example. I don't take pharmaceutical money, and I'm one of two members of Congress that's a Republican that sponsored a bill to codify President Trump's capping of prescription pill prices.
Trying to codify his capping of prescription.
Yeah, he did an executive
prices.
order to cap the prescription, so that they can't price gouge Americans on prescription pricing for drugs, basically.
Right.
And I'm one of two Republicans.
Really?
That's not that, yeah.
It seems like that Massey dude's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's.
It seems like
he marches to the beat of his own drum.
Yeah, it seems like he can't be controlled by anybody. He just like roams around with his chickens.
I will say this: I like Massey on his Second Amendment standpoint and perspective, but I think that his.
I don't even know if he's a Republican or Democrat. What is he?
Is
he independent?
I think he's more independent. Okay. But the thing is that I think that what happened with the Jeffrey Epstein personal attack with the president was not cool.
What did he say? I didn't follow that.
He was the one that has been largely accusing President Trump of having, a reason to hide the Jeffrey Epstein files. And I think
Well,
when
I
you're
mean,
looking,
everybody's been doing that, to be
well,
fair.
he's the one that specifically has been making it personal with the president. And
Oh,
you can see
really?
that based on the press conferences. So what I will say is that Massey's good in certain things, but I
Yeah.
think that he tends to make things very personal with the president. And you can still push for transparency. I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't make it a personal attack on the president.
Yeah. It just seems like he's just like an everyday dude who has chickens and lives in a trailer. You know?
He definitely doesn't live in a trailer at all. And
Oh,
he has
no.
a very, yeah.
I thought, or maybe it was like an RV. I don't know what it was.
No.
No,
he
he lives in a
definitely,
house?
he's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
He actually designed this really cool thing called a Klux capacitor that actually,
yeah.
So he actually very smart, and we connected on our chicken issues. But I'll tell Thomas that I think that the way that he handled it was wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that he'll have to work out with the president.
Yeah. The Epstein thing's crazy because everybody's implicated in it. Like, it's every single high-ranking official when it comes and
Well,
banker,
I'm not on it.
Not you. You're
Yeah,
not old
I'm
enough.
not implicated in
Thank
that
God
shit.
you're not old enough to be
Yeah.
on it. But I mean, all these people that were running around on Wall Street and in Miami, Fort Lauderdale in the 80s and 90s, these powerful people were one way or another connected to him. And there was a lot of innocent people connected to him. Tons of innocent people, I'm sure. Like all the physicists and scientists and actors and stuff that he flew around. I'm sure a majority of them are innocent, never did anything. But, you know, I don't know. I think it's pretty obvious his intelligence ties with the CIA in Israel and Saudi Arabia and the people he was around. I mean, he was friends with Trump for over 10 years, was really close with him. He went to his townhouse. I mean, a bunch of witnesses. I think it was Virginia Giuffre was the one who said that Trump was at his townhouse, you know, multiple times every week. And I don't know. I don't know if he's guilty or innocent. I don't know. I mean, I think he was definitely the right choice to be the president. I mean,
I will say
whether or not
of all the elected officials, Trump and presidents, because Bill Clinton was also on there.
yes.
Trump was the only one that cut ties with him, and
Yes, he
to my
was.
knowledge, was able to at least cooperate when investigators approached him.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people are saying, well, you know, you have people that are implicated in the investigation, right? You have innocent people. So the question is, the information that's been out, obviously the victims asked for their information not to be released. We don't want to dox victims, and we're not going to.
Yeah. But didn't they say they wanted this information to come out, but they can still remain anonymous?
Correct.
Yeah.
But that means that their names are going to have to be redacted. But also at the same time, remember what I told you about the victim testimony and from the witnesses and from the attorney.
Mm-hmm.
They told us they would give us a list. We have not gotten a list yet.
Yeah. The crazy,
And
yeah, right.
There's an active lawsuit, and these people are contacting them to settle.
Right.
So
Yeah. There's a victim compensation fund as well. I think that might be part of it.
I'm not an attorney, and I'm definitely not involved in the case like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is that, do these people deserve to be ignored and removed from polite society if they are engaged in sex trafficking? Absolutely. Should they face justice? Absolutely.
Right. There's
However,
nothing more deep state than covering up for pedophiles.
Correct. No one likes pedophiles. I have a bill called, well, you can look it up, is CAPM, but we want capital punishment for pedophiles, which, by the way,
Yeah.
the majority of Congress does not have that perspective.
They're minor attracted people.
Yeah, that's
Okay, get
crazy
right.
that they even try to make that a sexual identity. It's like completely opposite and really gross, especially if you have kids, to think that that's okay. But the fact is that the way that this has been ballooned into, my opinion, a direct smear campaign against specifically the president is what I don't like about how this has been handled, because you can see the paper trail that I provided.
Mm-hmm.
Not one person would help me with this. Not one. No one wanted to help.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end, some of the members of my task force signed on to a letter to the Department of Justice. And then everything started to come out. Well, I have proof. We have witness statements. They're investigating. I presented the document that there was destruction of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, though, is that the way in which Democrats chose to handle this specifically, Joe Biden was in office for 4 years. They blocked the release of the
Yes.
flight logs.
Yes.
No one talks about that.
Yep.
Why all of a sudden now Information was released by the White House. They want names specifically. The victims told us they would give us names. We haven't gotten the names yet.
And wasn't Bill Gates pushing hard to have them not release it and to keep it? Wasn't he like lobbying hard to keep them to suppress it?
I have not talked to Bill Gates, so I wouldn't know. But based on
that's what I think
the
Bongino
rumors,
was saying.
Yeah, the rumors of what we have heard specifically is that, and this is directly from the attorneys, is that when they found out that the witnesses were coming to talk to Congress, they got very concerned. So then their phone call started ringing. So when we get the names and Comer's decided to send subpoenas and all that, that will all be public for the American people to see. But I would just encourage people to understand that at the end of the day, this is politics.
Yes.
And so when you see a timeline of people not caring, the same people that claim to care about this, that have used this to smear the president specifically, knowingly for also 4 years did nothing when they knew that women and children were trafficked at the U.S.-Mexico border. In fact, they encouraged it. So if you're trying to tell me now that they all of a sudden care, I don't believe it.
Right.
Because I was on this issue way before and no one spoke up.
Yeah, no, it's being used as a political football on both sides. Absolutely. But like I just think that the whole Epstein Files thing is a limited hangout.
Yeah,
like it's a piece of paper, like bullshit. There's a fucking hard drive sitting somewhere in another country.
There was photos that he would allegedly had like during the investigations in West Palm Beach. There was like server or like like the towers, old school computers.
One of the witnesses said there was an entire room the size of this room that was literal servers and monitors. Like he has to have a freaking vault of hard drives.
What we do also know though from the victims, and I'm sure Democrats would also testify to this if you bring them in and interview them, is that we were told that there was a lot of CSAM materials in that child sexual assault material. So obviously not going to release that information, but for people, where is the accountability for these victims and who they were involved with? Virginia Dufresne, before she passed away, had alleged a number of people that were on this. The attorney and lead attorney that's now working with House Oversight on this, I hope can provide a list of names. But ultimately, my task force doesn't have subpoena authority. It's up to Chairman Comer. And because of the nature of the investigation, it's now been designated to the entire committee to deal with.
Right. Yeah, it's just, it's just frustrating. And I think all the evidence and all the stuff that the FBI has come out with is straight up an insult to our intelligence. Just like showing the video of his cell, like that wasn't even his cell.
I would say if I was in charge of the initial rollout, I would not have done it like that.
Yeah.
At all. I would have just put everything on the National Archives the way that they did with the JFK files. I've been encouraging this since day one. Put it all up there, house it in one area. It was like also done in like a Google, I think it was like Google Drive or something. They should have done it directly on the National Archives the way that they did with JFK, allow for easy PDF search on all of it. And then as we get more information, just upload directly. I think it's like when you give the illusion that you're hiding the ball or you are hiding the ball, that's when it's like, hey, there's something not right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, it makes me just wonder, like, what happens to people? It goes back to my lizard question to you earlier. Like, what do the lizard people say to you when
I've
you
not
finally
seen any
enter the
lizards.
government?
No lizards yet. And if I do, I probably...
Cash Patel looks like he saw a lizard when he was sitting there the other day.
I've yet to see lizards. Now, really stupid people I've come across. Very stupid people that you'd be surprised are in government. Totally come across those, unfortunately, on a regular basis. So,
yeah. Well, Anna, thank you for doing this. This has been a fascinating conversation. I appreciate it. Is there anything that we should cover that we haven't? That like what you're working on or what you plan on doing?
So our next hearing is going to be on MLK. We are pushing for the banning of stock trading for members of Congress. So that's made me incredibly popular among my colleagues. Also going to be forcing a vote on term limits, or at least calling people's bluff to see if they're actually serious about it, because everyone campaigns on term limits.
Forcing a vote on term limits.
Yeah. So
what should the limit be?
So I'd say 3 terms, but right now a lot of people, again, you have people that have been there literally for decades. If you're, in your late 80s and you're still in Congress, like, go enjoy the rest of your life. You don't need to be in Congress at 80. And also it's probably a health risk to you because there's so many stairs and a lot of marble. You could like break your hip.
Yeah.
But there's also this aspect of, I think people tend to prioritize this and make this their life, when in actuality, you should also, if you want to be like a really grounded representative, you should, go back to your district and interact with the people that vote for you, and maybe have a family and love your children and be a good parent. And then you can bring that perspective to Washington. I think that that's what's needed is a pro-family environment up there. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with what happened with Charlie. I think a lot of people kind of took a step back and were like, well, who is this Charlie Kirk person? And then they hear the things that he's talking about and how much sense it actually made. And the fact is that we've gotten to a political climate now where people thought it was okay if they disagree with you to kill you. So just think about that. If someone doesn't like what you're saying because of the political nature and environment that we're in, maybe they don't like that you have me on here. In some people's perspectives, they can shoot you in the head. And it's supposed to be okay. And that is a problem that we have culturally right now. And so I think that that's why collectively everyone needs to kind of push back against that. Yeah,
I totally agree with you.
Question everything, but read the facts and verify for yourself.
Bring on the AI government.
No. We need some interface with humanity and soul.
You think?
In that. Yeah, we don't want AI government in that sense. That's too.
As long as it's not owned by
dystopian.
Palantir, it'll be okay.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Palantir might own it. So, yeah. But
Awesome.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And yeah.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot. Good night, everybody.